Gentlemen, let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Brought to you by Guaranteed Foods, official sponsor of Family Mealtime. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
I mean, I've been trying to start the show for like 5 minutes, but Todd just won't leave the studio.
Yeah,
oh, my goodness. Just got a show to do, Todd. My goodness, man. All right, it's a Monday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, Dylan Michaels. We head up until 2 o'clock the next 4 hours. We've got you. A lot of stuff to get into today. Busy show today. We will talk with Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, and the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, a draft podcast. But get his thoughts on some of the rookies for the Chiefs, what they have shown in preseason games, how much you can take away or glean from preseason games, and look around at maybe some other rookies in the NFL, but also get his thoughts on Rashee Rice, Sky Moore going into year 2, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, the old sophomore, the year 2. Is it a sophomore slump or is the biggest improvement from year 1 to year 2? Kind of depends on the player. It's all an individual basis, but I do love that it's like if a guy looks really good, it's like, hey, the biggest improvement, Sky Moore, biggest improvement's going to be year 1 to year 2. Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson. Well, there's always that sophomore slump you got to worry about. There's always that second year, sort of a step back type deal, which is odd. But again, it's sort of individual players that you can connect that to. So we'll talk with them about those things, and I kind of want to get his thoughts on Isaiah Simmons too, because Simmons number 8 overall pick a few years ago, and local kid now in New York, and in one drive for the Giants in a preseason game, generated 2 pressures. So maybe Wink Martindale that just says, hey, you're so athletic and kind of a freak and fast and strong. What if we just sent you after the quarterback? What if we put you 3 inches away from the ball instead of 15 yards away from the ball? What if we did that? I don't know. And we'll see if that's how they use him, as just somebody to say, hey, go get the quarterback, Isaiah. Go use your freakish arms and length and size and strength and speed, and just rush the passer and go do that instead of playing, as a safety. Let's see what you can do. We'll find out what he looks like in New York. Maybe they use him that way, and then all of a sudden they find out, well, it's not working, and this is why the Cardinals ended up trading him for a 7th rounder, and the Giants gave up a 7th rounder and $1 million of cap money for Isaiah Simmons. Sounds like a pretty decent risk, if it is one.
If you get a chance to ever bet on the Cardinals improperly using and developing a football player, I would say that's a bet worth making.
I would have liked to get Hassan Reddick for a 7th rounder and $1 million his last year in Arizona.
You never mentioned that. You never mentioned that you were in on that and remained frustrated.
Would have liked for the Chiefs to sign Hassan Reddick from the Cardinals. But he went to Carolina, signed with Matt Rule, who was his college coach in Carolina, and then ended up in Philadelphia. But you know what he doesn't have? A Super Bowl championship.
Take that.
Yep, that's right. He would have if he was on the Chiefs, but he wasn't, and that damned field cost him a ring. If it wasn't for the field.
So
you know
close.
what? If he was on the Chiefs, maybe they don't have a ring. Maybe he's just out there slipping around and not able to tackle Jalen Hurts because, not able to play on grass that sucks or whatever.
Back in Arizona again, full circle.
There it is. 913-912-4810 is the text line. 913-912-4810, the text line. Did you enjoy your weekend, Josh, before it gets crazy with all of college football? So, it was a week 0.
Yeah.
But then a slower Sunday. You could watch the Little League World Series if you want to.
I didn't do that.
You could watch some of the Little League Royals if you want to that played in Seattle. No, it's fine. They're playing close games. I mean, it was a 3-2 game. They're playing close games. Castillo was on the mound. Marsh was fine. He had some wicked sliders and pitches and things like that, and they were close. And they get home run and some other things. They got 2nd and 3rd with 2 outs and only down by a run. So they're right there. They're fighting. But did you enjoy your final sort of quiet weekend before college football gets rolling hot and heavy on Thursday night on into even Sunday and then Monday before the NFL next weekend as well.
I did.
Good.
The non-sports content that I've enjoyed the late last week and over the weekend, I'm saving for LFB later on. I'll give you my little review on something completely new.
Yes.
It's completely new in this show's eyes, new to me. But I did enjoy that. Obviously, though, we had the post-game coverage here on Saturday. So football season for me really, really started when the preseason started. It really started for Lebo when camp opened because he was there every day. For me,
See, Lebo gets a break now, not having to drive to St. Joe.
Yes. For me, I think that, and look, I don't want to speak for Dylan also, but now me, Dylan, and Covell have 2 preseason games under our belt with what I'm calling the starters there now.
That's right.
So I think we've knocked off the rust. It was important to me to get hit at least once. So I just stood out in the hallway and told Dylan to just run at me full speed. So I spent some time on the floor out there on Saturday and just sort of waited for the swelling to go down. But after that, yeah, I was having a great time, and my weekend was rejuvenating.
Covell, can you get to the microphone?
Covell here?
Covell.
Hi, Covell.
Being with the starters, not like on the weekend, are you worried about cut down day tomorrow for 53?
I was a little bit, but I had a strong performance in the last one, so I think we're good.
I think he did.
ISM, LaMichael, P. Ryan, and Covell.
Three
Big
training
weekends,
camp
man.
stars, huge weekends.
I'm keeping them. I'm keeping.
He's making the cut. I don't know. I don't know
Early on,
about.
I was on the bubble, I think, but I think I worked my way out the bubble.
Also, special teams ace. I mean, you need somebody who can do it all, who can do the dirty work, who can clean it up on teams. Covell's got that too.
Let me tell you this.
We got a team of special teamers.
I was leaving on Friday. I actually got here on Friday. And Covell was cleaning out some of the areas that we have a lot of what we would call storage or just thrown junk somewhere in there, just stacked up or just thrown in there somewhere. And I was leaving on Friday, and he was still doing that. That's how you're in the spot on the team. That's how
right.
you make the 53-man roster. You stay after late. You work the jugs machine. You know, you do some extra hand fighting with Frank Clark or Tom Bahali if you're George Karloftis, whatever it might be, working with Joe Cullen, pushing the sled, things like that. And look, now he's a starter.
Dave Tobe loves that bleep. Yes. Dave Tobe saw you in the stairwell, and he was like, "That's the guy I need on my 53."
That's the baddest MFer in the league.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
That's
Huge preseason for Dylan and Covell both.
So there you go. You're going to get to know during post games Josh, Covell, Dylan, as they will be rocking it throughout the season, starting next Thursday with the Chiefs and the Lions. 6.5-point spread. The Chiefs are favored in that one against the Lions. We'll talk about that as the days go along and get closer to Thursday. We'll talk about that with roster cut down tomorrow, 3:00. And then on Wednesday at 3:00 is when they can start designating injured return players to return or putting players on injured reserve. So if there is something like that the Chiefs are going to be doing, let's say the one that would be the most likely, or I say 2 that would be most likely, Kadarius Toney, L'Jarius Sneed.
I like either of
So you could start designating those players on. I think I came up with the real words there. I think mine were the real.
Yours are real words.
I think you just made yours up. You just those don't even sound real. Yours don't even sound real. Mine were based on real words.
Oh, and I wish I had one more for you, but I don't think I have another one.
It's okay. It's okay.
That you're being barbarious. It's like a barbarian. How
exactly
a barbarian
right.
acts.
Yes.
I don't know, man. I'm out.
Caveman.
That's happened.
Caveman.
It's over.
Neanderthal Arius. So on Wednesday, you can designate players, which most likely, if they were going to do that, Kadarius Toney, L'Jarius Sneed, guys who have been injured, guys who haven't been practicing or playing.
Nick Jones could be on that list.
He could
no
be.
surgery, it sounds like.
Absolutely,
So.
he could be on that list. So guys that could make the 53 on Tuesday, that if they go the route of a Blake Bell, who, if he does not make the roster tomorrow, they can just re-sign him on, Wednesday or Thursday, whenever. So when they start designated players, if they are going to do such things. Charles Omenihu, again, reminder, does not count towards the 53. So when the Chiefs announce their 53-man roster tomorrow, don't be shocked. Like, hold on, Omenihu didn't even make the team? He didn't for the first 6 weeks of the season. He did not make the team for the first 6 weeks. And one added element, as, I kind of want to look through some different positional battles and players that may or may not make it. I mean, the big one being, from this weekend, what LaMichael Pirine did in showing, hey, you know what, everybody was talking about Deneric Prince, but I think you forgot about Dre or LaMichael Pirine. Like, I'm here, and I'm here. and he was awesome. He's had a much better preseason than Deneric Prince. If they were going to keep 4 running backs, it's obvious who the 4th running back would be. I can't imagine if they were to let Deneric Prince go and waive him, cut him tomorrow, that all of a sudden he would end up on somebody's team or would sign on another team's practice squad to where the Chiefs couldn't put him as one of their 16 if they wanted to do that. Michael Pirine, I don't know. As good as he's looked, and he's been on with some other teams before, there might be some injuries, a team somewhere that goes, you know what, that can be our 4th running back. We'll take him right now and sign him. So if there's going to be, one of those positional battles, running back could be it. Defensive line, obviously there's a lot of things to figure out. Offensive line, a lot of things to figure out. But one other note as it relates to Omenihu and Chris Jones, that defensive line. If Chris Jones does not report by tomorrow, that is 5 days before the end of training camp. And I know the Chiefs training camp St. Joe, but NFL defines training camp until 5 days before the first game. For all teams. It doesn't matter if the Chiefs play early or not. All teams Sunday before the first game. So not 5 days, but Sunday before the first game. So September 3rd on Sunday is the end of, quote, training camp.
For the entire league.
For the entire league. If a player is under contract and does not report within 5 days of the end of training camp, he is then officially eligible to be put on the did not report exempt list and will not count as a roster spot against your 53. So, and he will not be paid, and he can't play until he's taken off the roster exemption. So if Chris Jones is not with the Chiefs tomorrow, they can keep an extra spot on their team and put him on the did not report roster exemption. They can take that off of him. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that he misses like 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Right. They can then take it off of him 2 or 3 days later and figure some things out. So if he does not report tomorrow, he is eligible then to be put on the did not report roster exemption and does not count against 53. So there are 2 players on the Chiefs that are going to be on the team, that one for sure in Omenihu, and Chris Jones potentially, and Blake Bell potentially. It would give them the option of 3 extra spots for players that in any given other year wouldn't be on the team. If you go the route of Blake Bell cutting him, putting somebody on an IR, and then bringing him back. Chris Jones, roster exemption. Charles Omenihu, suspended list. Those are things just to keep in mind as we look at the defensive line and we say, wow, they kept 10 defensive linemen and none of them are named Chris Jones or Charles Omenihu. For now.
Right.
And then if Chris Jones reports and they want to play him, or they may look at it and go, hey, Chris, you reported Thursday or Friday. We're not going to play in the first game. So you're going to stay. Now it would be different. They'd have to figure out if they want to take him off the roster exemption, because if he's on that, he does not get paid.
Right.
So he can be with the team, but still be on the did not report exemption list and not get paid while with the team. That's going to be an interesting sort of hurdle that the Chiefs would have to overcome, because then you've got to get right with your 53-man roster if he reports and says, no, I want my money for week 1.
Right.
Well, you're not going to play. Yeah, but I reported I want my money. This is good. Now that can be negotiated. That can be part. The fines and everything can't be negotiated away. That part can be negotiated. I showed up. You have me on the exempt list. You're going to take me off the exempt list for week 1. Even if I don't play, I'm going to get my $1 million.
That makes the most sense as the next line of action, unless they get a deal done, which I still think there's a chance, right?
And then it won't matter. Then you got him on the 53, and you don't have to make this huge decision as to what do you do at the defensive line if Chris Jones hasn't reported yet. How long is he going to hold out?
But if that deal happens on Tuesday, then it won't. Not tomorrow. A week from Tuesday.
Yeah.
Then it's still not going to matter, and you still have to have that conversation. What I imagine would be, all right, I'll be there. I'll be on the sideline in street clothes. I get it. But I'm not going to be there for free. Like, I am finally, our side has broken. I am reporting. I'm not going to stand on the sideline in a bucket hat and sunglasses just to piss off Sean Payton to not get paid for being here. But again, I would fully understand that from the Chiefs side, you could say, welcome back, I guess. But if you wanted to get paid for being in the first week of the season, you could have been here in a way that would have had you prepared to play in the first week of the season, which is just another way that this all gets kind of ugly, kind of messy, and cannot be good vibes for anybody. Because
then if you're going that route, you're probably going to have an unhappy Chris Jones most of the season.
Yep.
And I think that would be the nail in the coffin of the final year with the Chiefs.
Absolutely.
Where I think if he plays this year under his final year of this contract, I think it is the final year for Chris Jones in Kansas City, because there's just not a scenario where he goes into next year and gets as much guaranteed dollars as the Chiefs are offering him this year to be on the Chiefs. They would offer him less. Even if he had the same season, you'd still offer him less because he's a year older. So this is the last time he can get the contract that the Chiefs are offering him. Franchise, trade, team may give you more, but that's also on a different team than the Chiefs. Now, if he's reported and they still keep him on the exemption list and he does not get paid, well, then I think that pretty much guarantees that there's so much, it's acrimonious between the two.
Yeah. Right.
So much acrimonious as, and it's not even talking about Legarius or Canarius or Thacarius, who's no longer on the teamius. That would be an issue moving forward. But we'll see. We know this. His agents like Joe's barbecue, so.
It's something, I guess.
It's where the smoking takes place.
It sure is. I hope there's fire.
That's where you're smoking right there. Look at all that meat going to be smoked. So clearly they're here to help out negotiate a contract for Jody Fortson.
Did you see Marcus Kemp just got cut?
I did.
I don't think he
Cat's
is.
brother?
I don't think he is actually, but it feels like he should be because I think Byron Pringle is. So
is DeMarcus Robinson a Cat's brother?
He also is. Well, I don't know if he's a Cat's brother, but maybe they're all Cat's brothers. Maybe you join the agency and it's like, welcome to the family. We're all Cat's brothers now. Look at me. I'm the Cat's brother now.
Would his IG account be at also NFL agent?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it has to be, or at least
if he joins the agency.
Marcus Kemp -Cats.
Marcus Kempatz, NFL agent.
Well,
at NFL agent Kemp.
I clicked Kemp's page. I thought I was going to get to see his agency, but
no. Why would you do that?
It didn't show up, so that's too bad.
Yeah. So those are some things to be looking for tomorrow as we get closer to cutdown day. Now, there may be some names that come out today.
Yes.
I mean,
keep an eye out.
You never know. I mean, if they're making decisions at the end of the roster that's like, hey, they got to get to 53. There's probably, Matt on Friday said there's probably 14 guys that he's looking at that could be, part of the roster that are fighting for certain spots. Well, that takes you to 67. They're at 90. So they probably have a pretty good idea of guys that have zero chance to make it, and they probably don't have to wait till tomorrow to let that particular player know, hey, best of luck. Appreciate the work you did. Here's your final check. Have a great day. Good luck, man. They probably don't have to wait till tomorrow for a good portion of the players. So there could be some names that are coming down today. Probably not the roster surprise if there is one of those on this team. That probably wouldn't happen today. That'd probably be tomorrow, like 3 o'clock or something.
There was a little bit yesterday, though, of I can't remember who the players that were getting discussed this way were about, but a discussion of, hey, here's some guys that are going to get waived by these teams, which sort of officially begins opening their trade market. So if you are Amir Smith-Marset, you might say, hey, guys, if I'm not going to be here, let that be known sooner rather than later, and get a 5th round pick out of me and send me to the team that wants to jump the waiver wire. Or certainly with the running backs, we've talked about P. Ryan and Prince, and where that leaves Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think he's going to be on this team. Frankly, I think the Chiefs probably value him more highly than any other team in the league would right now. But guys like that, Lucas Niang, Prince Teguanogo, like one of those guys is probably not going to make the cut and probably not going to make the practice squad. So if you could float that out and get, again, just a 6th round pick to a team that doesn't want to have to wait through waivers or fight the open market, depending on where those guys would be as veterans. Obviously, Niang and Prince are younger guys, and Smith-Marset's still a younger guy, but there might be a little bit of action there that we can keep an eye on, too. I'd be happy for Smith-Marset and happy for the Chiefs to see a trade come down today for him, because he looked like the Chiefs' best. He might have just flatly been the Chiefs' best wide receiver this preseason. It's just often later in games and not necessarily from Patrick Mahomes, which is kind of a bummer.
I said this on Sunday Sound Off last night, that if you took the jerseys off and switched them, and you took Amir Smith-Marset and you put the number 8 Ross jersey on him, and then that guy got cut, there would be a riot with Chiefs Kingdom about also everything ISM has been doing would be all over ESPN.
Yeah, probably
if it was number 8 for the Chiefs. But it's not. So it's, it's not Justin Ross. It's not Rashee Rice.
you put a Richie James jersey on him, I mean,
be still my heart.
Hello.
I mean, just whoa, guy who, by the way, ended up on my fantasy team over the weekend.
Look at that. Good for
I
you.
mean, that was pretty obvious.
Yeah, I had to.
I mean, come on, man. Just so stupid people in this draft.
Is he gonna be like? Is he gonna be the guy that inspires the team name? Like, I'm Richie James. Bleep. Like, is that your team name or?
It's not.
Okay, I'm trying to give you some options.
But it could be. It could be.
Ooh, how is this a new King James for you? Who's the greater James? LeBron or Richie?
It's the actual king.
It's
Yeah,
Richard
LeBron.
James, King Richie.
Look, Richie is a guy that I think is gonna.
Prince James.
He's gonna be. That's fine. He's a Jester James. He's gonna become a fan favorite, I think, this year. So of course he was gonna end up on my fantasy team. So, he and Jerick McKinnon both ended up on my fantasy team. That's a shocker, I know. Real surprise. That those
Absolutely stunning.
ended up as part of the.
What is your
East
team's name? Do you have a clever?
Eastside Gozenyas.
Is this just Jason's? Is it called Jason's Guys or?
Eastside Gozenyas.
Oh, that's the name of the team. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yep, it goes in you. So we'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. 11 o'clock, Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus. Noon, Matt Verderam, Sports Illustrated. We got Learn Funniest Best before the show is over as well. We'll take a timeout. I do want to talk about some of those roster decisions as we get to closer to cut down day and 53-man roster for the Chiefs. Reactions to preseason game number 3, vastly different than preseason game number 2, it felt like. And FAU played the most snaps of any Chiefs defensive player and the 5th most snaps of any rookie during the preseason. So that's kind of interesting. They are throwing the workload at FAU. They are getting him as ready as they possibly can for the start of the season because, hey, man, we're going to have to throw you in the water. And we want to know that you've at least had some training as to how to swim. Okay? That's going to happen next Thursday, son. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We'll talk with Trevor Sikkema coming up at 11 o'clock, Pro Football Focus, and the noon, Matt Verderam from Sports Illustrated. Get his thoughts on what he thinks is going on the latest with Chris Jones, if he's heard anything, if there's any traction, if the Katz brothers were in town to open lines of communication, or if they just came in town randomly. They were on like a cross-country road trip together. Like, we're going from Miami to Seattle. Where's our stopping points? Let's go. We got to stop in to KC and get some Joes. And then we'll head over to Denver. And then on from Denver, we'll go over to Salt Lake and visit Corey Anderson, who I'm big friends with from 2020 when he was championing Chris Jones getting the contract. And he was a part of our agency there. So we'll just hang out with him for a little bit, say hello to his lovely bride and daughter, and then on up to Seattle. Let's do it, everybody. I don't think that's the case, but, I'm not eliminating that as a possibility either. So.
Maybe they had just heard that Chris Jones was becoming, loosely interested in playing football again. And they're like, whoa, let's not rush to any rash decisions here, folks.
Are you really ready to stop hanging out in Miami right now? I mean,
Look,
you kidding me,
You
Chris?
got a lot of fun by not playing football this year, Chris.
You got like 10 more days before you need to play football. Enjoy it, man. 10 days left. Enjoy it. After that, you got to be a whole football player thingy, Come on, just enjoy the fruits of the labor of all of the football that you've been doing in your life. You footballed a lot, man. Now's the time to enjoy all the footballing that got you to this spot.
Not in 4 or 5 years when your career is taken from you in the with the certainty that no player is ever fully able to distance themselves from. No. Let's go ahead and let's start wrapping this bleep up now.
That's right. Your terms. Do it on your terms.
We're doing a bit here of just like the bad advice, fake bad advice game. This would also be bad advice for agents trying to make money on their most important client by 100 miles.
That's right.
I don't know what their angle is.
That's right. 913-912.
Our doors are open. The address is like on the website, Katz Brothers. If you want to call any of us here, want to come in and chat, I'd love to hear your side. I don't mean to be rude. I'm just confused.
913-912-4810, Texas. If he doesn't get his game check, don't the Chiefs get that back in cap space? Yes, but I believe that will be the 2024 cap.
That makes the most sense. Think of it as a cap rollover because you can't know you're going to get it until you got it.
Yeah, so it won't be like an immediate, okay, you didn't get this money here, so therefore the Chiefs now get an extra $1 million. It'll just be $1 million off of what was a projected cap number for this year, and then it can roll over to 2024. So they would get that relief. Yes, it would just be next year. It wouldn't be this year, the way that I understand in all my reading of the CBA.
And next year they can use it as a down payment for Nick Bolton's Supermax.
That's exactly right. Nick Bolton joining Jaylen Brown in Supermax contracts with the Celtics. 913-912-4810. Let's hear from Andy Reid. Reactions to preseason game number 3. One of the reactions that was out there was about number 4 for the Chiefs and the conversation we had this time last week.
Yep.
Which was vastly different than the conversation coming out of said game on Saturday.
Yep.
Here's Andy Reid talking about Rashee Rice.
He's got a lot of talent. He's just got to hang on to the ball. He's got good hands. You just got to focus in on it, squeeze it, and catch it first, and you can go do your thing after that. So he'll be all right. He's just got to keep working through it.
I'm hoping this is a blip on the radar, that we've talked a lot about the preseason for Jamar Chase, and he was dropping everything, just dropping everything. By the way, Tex says fantasy team, nobody cares, Jason, which is a great callback with Braden Gall. But also, it's one of the reasons why in my auction draft a few years ago, I got Jamar Chase so cheap, is because it was the day after his worst preseason game when he had like 4 drops in the game and was like, he's going to drop the ball. I'm like, he's one of the best wide receiver prospects ever.
He'll figure it out.
Just going to keep bidding. No, I want this guy. Nobody. Really? I get him for that price?
A great feeling.
You fools. And you're going to let me have Richie James 3 years later? You fools. You idiots. He's not Jamar Chase, but we've seen somebody have struggles with dropping the football in the preseason. It is at least an example of somebody doing that. But Saturday wasn't the only game he's had drop passes. Last Saturday wasn't the only game he's had drop passes. It's been all 3 games so far that he's had a drop that hit him right in the hands. And obviously, you're a wide receiver. So, as Andy Reid said, you got to catch the football. You got to squeeze, you got to catch the football. As much as we talk about the different skill sets, Josh, of Sky Moore and Rashee Rice, part of the Rashee Rice has a chance to have more production than Sky Moore because his skill set is manufacturing touches, just finding ways to get him the ball, even if it's down the sideline, jump ball, and let him go and get it because he's got this unbelievable innate skill of contested catches that hasn't manifested so far in the preseason.
Yeah, I said last week that my little drive takeaway from, I think it was the first drive, right? Last week, last Saturday, was that drop down the seam, and my little takeaway was, I hope this isn't the thing we talk about too much on Monday. I did not write a similar phrase on my play sheets on Saturday because it became evident after the dropped would-be touchdown bomb. Oh. After that, it was evident, this is a thing we're going to talk about not just Monday, but as soon as the postgame show begins. And we're going to talk about it again on Monday. And there's a way to talk about it reasonably and responsibly. I think it is saying, hey, Jamar Chase went through all of this and then some. This does not mean this is completely demonstrative of a guy who cannot catch the football or even a guy who had real drop problems in college. We're not talking about Quentin Johnston. Like, if he was having, and I don't know what happened the last couple of games of the preseason for him, but it was just that first game that it was like, Quentin Johnston, right? I think it was game 1 for him. Quentin Johnston drop. Oh, no.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's all snowballing. That's not the Rashee Rice, playbook. So I do think there's still plenty of reason to be optimistic about that not being something that just curses his game. But if we're still talking about it in week 8, it's going to be a real different story. If we're talking about it in week 2 or 3, it's going to start to seep in a little bit. And look, I mean, it was the next couple of routes for him. I mean, 2 passing plays later, he was open a couple times and they did not go to him. And then I think it was the first play of the second half. Blaine Gabbert goes straight to Rashee Rice on an easier, one of those more short kind of manufactured touches. He got to do his little jitterbug kind of thing and get a positive play again. I'm not selling stock in Rashee Rice, but I would rather have seen a preseason where he just caught everything. That's kind of where I land.
No, I'm with you. I think that's a good way to put it. I think there's an added level of, there's some concern there because, he is dropping at an alarming rate.
Yeah.
I'm not selling stock in it because it's preseason. He's getting used to the NFL and the speed, and he's uber talented. We'll see moving forward. The odd part is last Saturday, so against the Cardinals, he dropped the first one and then caught everything.
Yep.
This game, he caught the first one and then started dropping everything. And the first catch was the toughest. It was in traffic, catches the ball, gets hit, holds on to it. All right, hey, there you go. Next one, easy first down. Little out route, right in his hands, easy first down, drops it. Another one, drops it. Manufactured touchdown the line of scrimmage, which would have been a huge gain, by the way. That thing was set up and blocked perfectly. If he catches that, he might still be running, just doing the old Bo Jackson running up the tunnel thing. I don't think that was the way that it would set up, though. It would be on the opposite side of the tunnel.
He got looped around.
You get it. He could have still.
Yeah.
He could still be running if he wants to. I mean, maybe he's got that much stamina. Andy Reid said he was in great shape after he threw up. He's fine. Yeah. But that thing was just blocked so perfectly, which probably makes the coaches even more annoyed, and maybe even himself more annoyed because when you watch that on film and you go, "Oh my God,
I blew it."
Yeah, and then the touchdown.
Yeah,
which. I mean, make a better throw. Come on.
Look, it was a little bit of a duck.
Yeah, but
it was a little bit of a duck.
You got to catch that.
And then went
man.
between his hands and face mask perfectly. I mean, it was I don't think it touched his face mask, but it was. If it was a magnet, it would have been affected by it. It would have stuck there.
When people say, "Oh, that went right through the breadbasket," that's the breadbasket. That is what they're meaning. That's the breadbasket right there. Yeah, it's not great.
No.
But it's not like he is the. I don't want to defend Rashee Rice by then downing somebody else, so I don't want to do that. Just that it's a concern, but I'm not selling stock. I think that's a great way to put it. There have been some other things with wide receivers, too. MVS hasn't even played, so I'm not worried about that. MVS is probably as locked into a role as any receiver in the NFL. It's like, name a receiver in the NFL that you know exactly what his role is going to be, and really if he was on any team that in the league at all, what's his role going to be? Probably MVS, because his role in Green Bay was this, and his role in Kansas City is this, and if he plays for the Toronto Argonauts, I think his role is going to be this. Like, he is that. If he plays for the Kansas City Goats, this is the role MVS is going to have. Okay, this is the specific role.
It's like Michael Thomas, maybe Mike Evans, MVS, Justin Watson. Like, that's the main four.
Those are the four, absolutely. But we know what to expect. Sky Moore hasn't played that much, right? And Justin Ross has looked good. There's also elements of we don't know behind the scenes how, if there were wrong routes run. The Blaine Gabbert throw that was like, oh, Blaine Gabbert just overthrew him.
Rasheed Rice, here's big brain take. Rasheed Rice and Justin Ross both cost Blaine Gabbert a touchdown. We will talk way more about the Rasheed Rice one than the Justin Ross one. Both cost 6.
Although the next play was the pass to Amir Smith-Marset.
Different
after the Justin
EPA
Ross one.
Impacts.
That's true.
So to get real dorky about it.
He went 1 for 2 on that same exact distance for a touchdown. It cost him an incompletion. As opposed to, it also helped Amir Smith-Marset hopefully get a job somewhere, whether it's with the Chiefs or somewhere else.
Justin Ross also took a touchdown off the board, but in a situation where it was much easier to recreate another touchdown.
That's right, yeah.
Rasheed Rice would have had a bomb play
Yeah.
that was not getting recreated, and so that hurts a little more.
And I think there's a chance, I mean, they don't release all 22 when it comes to the preseason. I'd love to see the all 22 on that, because especially from the end zone view, because what it looked like when it was developing from the side, he might have had 2 touchdowns.
Might have been 2.
He might have been a couple
2.
touchdowns, and we would be having a completely different conversation right now.
Oh, he'd be getting drafted in fantasy.
Oh, he was drafted.
Over Sky Moore.
He was drafted in our league by, I don't know, 12 times as much money as would be in any draft anywhere outside of Kansas City. So our budget is $150. So like good wide receivers that go for like 35,
that a
40,
$12
$45.
bid?
That's exactly
Okay.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. He went for $12. It was right before the game started too. So then it's like, oh, Rasheed Rice dropped pass. Rasheed Rice, oh, he just dropped the touchdown. Oh, Rasheed Rice there. And he's like, are you bleeping me? It was great. I think he's a $1 player anywhere outside of Kansas City. $12 player here. I wonder if Richie James is on rosters outside of here in New York.
So I know we're in we are desperately, or we're rapidly getting near nobody cares territory.
Oh, are you kidding me?
But,
we're just going down the road of everybody cares.
But we're in Kansas City. We're talking about the Chiefs and Chiefs players. What was like the hierarchy of Chiefs receivers in terms of like dollar amounts, order in your league? I don't need the specifics, but like
I'd have to go back and look to see what it was. In fact, I can do that.
You have that capability?
I've got yes, I can.
After the break.
We can rebuild them. We have the capability. Although surprisingly, nobody drafted Amir Smith-Marset.
Unfortunately, the writing's on the wall due to nothing he's done wrong.
Yeah.
But
in fact, I want to hear on the other side of the break what Amir Smith-Marset thinks of himself, because during the preseason, I agree.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 W.
curious.
I want to know, so at least I care.
Yes. $150 budget. 13 players drafted. So of the 13 players, they have to all have $1. And then 4 players that can be $0 in like a snake draft, right? So here's the breakdown of how much player, and then there's a practice squad round where you can take 2 players on your practice squad that don't count for anything, and you can keep them the next year. That's never mind.
This league has rules. I like it.
It's great. So here's the breakdown of how much the players cost of a $150 budget.
Looking at Chiefs wide receivers.
Yep. You want to go lowest to highest, or highest, the most expensive to the cheapest?
Let's go most expensive to the cheapest, because I'm even curious just who got claimed.
Rasheed Rice is $12.
It's a keeper league, so
keeper league. Yeah, so you keep him next year.
Sure.
And
okay. All right.
So Rasheed Rice went for 12. Sky Moore went for 7. That's the second most. $5 cheaper. Kadarius Toney went for 6. Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Richie James were in the $0 snake draft.
Really?
Justin Ross was on somebody's practice squad from a year ago, and Justin Watson's like, hey, I'm here still. Yeah. He's out there available. So 6 of the 7 guys are on a roster. One, Ross would have went for some money if he wasn't already on somebody's team on their practice squad. And James and MVS were snake draft, but Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, and Rice went for money.
But I could have had Sky
Moore. League, by the way. It's a keeper league, so
you could have had Sky Moore and
Kadarius Toney
for the price of
for
Richie
$1
James?
more than Rasheed Rice.
Or than Rasheed Rice, I mean, yeah. I would rather be on one of those values, I think.
But if you go into next year with the $16 number 1 receiver for the Chiefs, if Rasheed Rice is awesome, then hey, you spent that money.
I think there's a pretty good chance that's Sky Moore.
Could be.
Interesting.
Could be. But being the keeper league, MVS and Richie James are like, well, who knows where they're going to be next year.
Not as high a ceiling, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know where Amir Smith-Marset is going to be, but I know where his headspace is.
Yeah.
And I love his headspace.
Me too.
Dylan, can we play the Amir Smith-Marset? He was talking after the game with his awesome game that he had, and Jesse Newell had a follow-up from what Smith-Marset said earlier in his press conference about who he is. Here's Jesse Newell's question and ISM's response.
You said you know who you are. Who do you think you are as a receiver?
One of the baddest motherfuckers in the league. That's all I'm gonna say.
What do you think the next 48, 72 hours are going to be like? And Tuesday at 3 o'clock to find out what's going on.
Stressful. That's all stressful. Because I don't know.
I thought he was going to drop an S-bomb after that. What do you think? Stressful. I thought he was going to Shane. Stressful, man.
You can hear him catch himself after he didn't quite catch himself. Right. The only thing he didn't catch on Saturday was his own F-bomb.
I also would have rather him gone with his first instinct, which is one of the baddest MFers in the world. And then he's play it again, because I think he's going to go, and then he says league. I think he's thinking about baddest MFers in the world, but then he catches himself and is like, well, what if there's somebody in Russia that I have no idea what they look like? Yeah. I'm not going to claim that either, because I'm not trying to start an international incident here.
One of the baddest motherfuckers in the league. That's all I'm gonna say.
I think he might have.
Not trying to start a war.
I think what he really heard was himself say "mother bleeper" and then go, "Oh, was it? League. I shouldn't have said."
League just glossed right past that. Now I'm cut. Great.
He even smiled a little bit too in the video. Yeah. Like he knew, everyone around knew.
Look,
good work,
Amir. You have done everything possible that you could do. And you were on the 53-man roster until you said mother bleeper, and now we just got to let you go. I'm sorry. Oh, it's disappointing. We're not happy about it, but I mean, you can't cuss to the media, or you are cut. And look what we did. We traded Marcus Peters. He wasn't even being interviewed when he was yelling curse words to mess up interviews.
Look, we saw quarterback Patrick, and there's a lot of blue language in this thing, and we're gonna have to. Are we going to have to let you go? This contract probably not super movable, but we will be suspending you the first 12 games of the season. One for every potty word you use in the first 3 episodes. Go to timeout and think about what you've said.
That's right. We're so mad at you, Patrick, we're cutting Amir Smith-Marset because he cussed. All right? You think about that, Patrick. Next time you want to feel like, whether you were hitting the snooze button or you finally woke up. And who's the one that shook you awake? Okay? You think about that, Patrick. You think about Amir Smith-Marset not being on this Chiefs team. You think about that. Next time you want to say a curse word, I'm here. Yeah, you know who isn't? ISM. Thanks a lot. I would like to see him on the Chiefs, though.
I would too, man. He's been great.
It's a. How about this? We went from how's Remigio going to be on the team to How are they going to get ISM on the team? They should keep 9 receivers because Nico and Amir have done enough that it feels like they should be on the team.
Build the whole team out of wide receivers. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, you know what? Todd Haley said you'd have 53 Lance Longs.
These dudes are better than Lance Longs.
I'd take 53 Lance Longs. You're going to lose. I mean, I know you said you can find 53 guys off the street and win 2 games, but if they're all Lance Longs, I don't think you can. Challenge accepted, Todd. Go find 53 Lance Longs somewhere, which you can find them on the street because Lance Long was.
I still play a lot of NFL Street. I think ISM could play safety, DB somewhere. I think he could lay a hit.
Why can't they keep 8 receivers?
Because Andy Reid hates fun.
No, I think it's probably because they're keeping 3 quarterbacks.
Men, summer is here. It's a time to vacation, get outside, and enjoy life with the one you love. But if you have erectile dysfunction,
Of family mealtime. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco and Dylan Michaels heading up until 2 o'clock. We continue talking some Chiefs football as preseason is wrapped up. Cut down day coming up tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Let's talk with Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, and also NFL Stock Exchange, NFL Draft Podcast, joining us here in the zone. Trevor, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, my friend. Appreciate you having me on, as always.
Well, I really appreciate it. I'm curious as to, we look through and we see these final 3 preseason games are done, and now it's cut down day and all of that stuff. How much can you glean from preseason as we look maybe specifically to rookies? And you've been, following this rookie class for a couple of years in the podcast and some of the things you do at Pro Football Focus while also covering the NFL. But just in general, like rookies, how much can you glean, even if somebody looks good or bad or sort of just generic? Is there anything really tangible to take away from what we see in these first 3 games?
Well, it has to be, right? I think that the phrase that we like to say these days is, the preseason games don't count, but they do matter. And I think they matter a lot for rookies because it's the first time that you're seeing them play against NFL competition. And where certainly you could look at two sides of the coin, you could say, all right, well, if a guy's not standing out right away as a rookie, especially in the preseason, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? I mean, they're really acclimating to a new team, a new playbook, the speed of the game, a new life outside of the field as well. And so all of those things go into it. So you could certainly, I don't want to say excuses, but you can find reasons to say, all right, so they didn't stand out. It's not the worst thing in the world. But when they do stand out early, that is notable. That's not something that you want to brush off. That's not something that, again, on the opposite side of the coin, you don't want to say, they just got lucky early on. No. You want to take that into account because just like we do with college football when we're evaluating these draft prospects before they come to the NFL, if you stand out at a young age, if you stand out your freshman, sophomore year, that matters because you're doing that against guys who are, probably 2, 3, 4, maybe even beyond in the NFL years into the league. And so when you stand out early on, it definitely matters when it comes to you making the team versus you making a practice squad or you getting cut. And that's something that every team in the NFL knows. They love to see that, especially with guys who just got drafted.
Yeah, I've used the term let the cake bake, and it sort of depends on your perspective as to what's going on with that player. I've used it in relation to the Royals and Bobby Witt Jr., and earlier this year when he was really struggling, an on-base percentage career was like at 270, and it's like, I mean, that's not going to play in the big leagues, although he's only 22, 23 years old, and a high school kid, and I was like... we say let the cake bake, right? It's like you need 1,500 plate appearances, like 1,000 at-bats, whatever it might be. I said, but you see these other players that are just crushing it and playing awesome baseball. Nobody's going, well, let's wait to see what he really is. Like, if he's good, it's like, hey, this is who he's going to be. If he's bad, let's chill. Let's wait a little bit. Let's see what he can produce. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong because – you can be a player that just comes out and just starts playing awesome football, baseball, whatever it might be at a young age and showing that you belong there. You can also be a guy that might be a little slower burn. And Bobby Witt is now playing some of the best baseball in Major League Baseball. So, some of that stuff comes through. But that's just interesting, sort of like, it doesn't count, but it matters. There is something tangible to that. I'm curious as to what you see from Felix and Uzama, someone who I think with the whole Chris Jones situation backdrop going on with this season, Trevor, that, the Chiefs are going to need some pass rush against the Detroit Lions. Even if Chris Jones reports he's not going to play his 70, 80% of snaps that he typically does, and Charles Omenihu, who was out 6 weeks, there's a lot on the plate of FAU than there was when they drafted him, not knowing about Omenihu and expecting Chris Jones to be there at camp. So what have you seen from him, if anything, from his first 3 preseason games?
Yeah, they've given him a lot of snaps, and that's what you need, right? I mean, you draft him at the back end of the first round, and when you do that, anytime you draft a guy in the top 50 at all, so even bleeding a little bit into that second round there, you've got to expect that these guys aren't going to look overwhelmed right away. I guess some situations are a little bit different. Sometimes you might draft a quarterback at the back end of the first round. You say, okay, we're going to give this guy time to develop. He's going to need a little bit of time, but we're going to do so because it's a quarterback, so we'll draft him a little bit higher than maybe where their talent level is deserves. But a lot of these other positions, including the ones in the trenches, you want to see them play right away. And I didn't think that the game was going to be too much for Felix Uzama. When I watched him at Kansas State, he's somebody that I loved for that reason. He's a more heavy-handed, 5-technique defensive tackle, and I think that the Kansas City Chiefs could use that anyways, right? Especially when you have a guy like Chris Jones out there, which you're assuming that that's going to happen at some point. Really, you just need the other guys to hold the point of attack, right? Don't get blown off the ball. Don't have a ton of negative plays going up against you. And I think that's why they draft George Karlaftis as well, because of what kind of a worker he was in controlling the line of scrimmage and the strength that he plays with. Uzama is kind of that same mold of a player where I think that first and foremost, he's not going to look overwhelmed and he's going to have the power profile that you want to play in the league. And then you'll kind of figure out what his best pass rush moves are going to be once he gets in there. And so I think that's where we are. And I think that it's kind of everything's going according to schedule with him. And I figured that he was going to be part of that rotation for them early on. It's great to see him get as much preseason work as he did. I think he's going to win with power a little bit more than he does with speed, certainly right now. But when the hands get a little bit faster, when he starts to anticipate what NFL offensive tackles are going to do a little bit more, I think that he still absolutely has that too. There were times at Kansas State where I saw him get a little bit flexible and have a little bit of bend, and I was like, okay, I didn't think that you had that in you, but he'll flash it every now and then, and I'd love to see him continue to do that in the NFL. So he is somebody who I thought was going to contribute pretty early on, but he is somebody as well who I think year 2, year 3, then he's really going to hit his stride as a contributor.
Trevor Sikkim is our guest from Pro Football Focus. How is he maybe compared to some other edge rushers? I haven't been following closely all of the guys except for how good Will Anderson has looked. But, like a Tyree Wilson who's still recovering. Will McDonald's getting some love with the Hard Knocks and the Jets and things like that. But there's a player that I think will be connected to FAU, and it's not his fault, and it's not like the Chiefs had a chance to draft this player. It's not like a year ago where we watched George Pickens and Sky Moore when the Chiefs could have drafted George Pickens. They traded down. They get Sky Moore. But Nolan Smith is a guy that went to the Eagles that everybody loved, and a lot of people around here, myself included, were hoping that he would drop to the Chiefs at 31 or maybe even trade to get him. He went right in front of him. He might be a guy that's sort of compared to Felix throughout their career. What's he looking like early on? Does he look the part that people have been raving about through college, and how he was there at number 30? Maybe even looking at what he and Felix have done in these 3 preseason games.
Yeah, I mean, the Nolan Smith conversation is kind of a tough one because I would have taken Nolan Smith in the top 12. So it's hard to think about, okay, well, this team almost had a guy like Nolan Smith, or they could have picked Nolan Smith, because I just simply would have picked him a lot higher. I have no idea how he got as far as he did, especially in last year's class. I mean, this is a dude who, of course, he's a little bit smaller, but we just saw Hassan Reddick rack up all the sacks that he did, and Nolan Smith is far superior to a run defender, at least in potential at the NFL level, than Hassan Reddick is. So I didn't really understand that one. It's kind of, it would be tough for me to compare him to a guy like Nolan Smith, just because I thought he was going to get picked a lot higher. But when you look at Felix, the experience is great. I think that he is top 5 amongst all defensive ends in snaps played this preseason. So I love the experience that he got. And I'm looking at the numbers right now. We have him top 15 overall for all defensive ends, rookie defensive ends, going into the season when it comes to their preseason grade. So ton of experience, and he's playing really well. Again, he does not look – the run defense grade is the one that stands out to me. I'm just looking at it right in front of me in our database. He's got a 73.4 run defense grade, and when you are playing in the trenches for the first time as a rookie, it's hard to not look overwhelmed, just because the NFL game is so much stronger. They're so much faster. The technique is so much more honed in on you're going up against grown men. You really are. You're going up against mid, late 20s, sometimes early 30s, guys who have been playing this game a long, long time, especially at this level. And so for him to look as sturdy as he has along the trenches, I think that is a really good sign. So that's kind of where he is in terms of the rest of the defensive ends that were rookies in this class. He's top 5 in snaps played, and then he's top 15 in overall grade. So that's a good spot to be.
Trevor Sikkim is our guest from Pro Football Focus. Freshman to sophomore, year 1 to year 2 in the NFL. This is sort of one of those to where it's going to be an individual basis as to what players do, but there's certainly a line of thinking that, hey, you're going to improve. Maybe the biggest improvement is from your year 1 to year 2. You understand how to prepare. You understand what an offseason is. You've spent an offseason from year 1 to year 2 getting ready for the football season, not getting ready for the combine and then going to rookie minicamp, and now you're just drowning and you're trying to stay afloat in the playbook and scheme and all of that stuff. So there can be a huge jump. But also people talk about, well, is there a sophomore slump? Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams were guys that, were real surprises last year for the Chiefs, and they needed them to be with how thin they were at the cornerback position. But Steve Spagnuolo and Dave Merritt have both talked about the struggles that those guys have had through camp. And Dave Merritt even saying, well, there's a couple things working against them. One, you get a championship, sometimes you get complacent. Sophomore year is always tough to come back. Sometimes there's that sophomore slump. And these guys, maybe they were reading their press clippings. Maybe they were reading the paper, essentially saying they didn't show up to camp and look like they thought they would. And I'm wondering, is that just a coach challenging somebody? Because you're no longer a backup 4th and 7th rounder that's now filling in and going, wow, they look pretty good for a 4th and 7th rounder. One of you is going to be a starting cornerback in the NFL, and you're going to be viewed as such. So Do you look at the year 1 to year 2 as the biggest jump, or is there that element of you can slide back and there's that, sophomore slump that Dave Merritt, the cornerbacks coach for the Chiefs, has talked about with these two individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this first and foremost. Cornerback is the most up and down position in the NFL. I mean, you have guys who are shut down elite players one year who just can look completely different the next. And it's just because winning at that position, I mean, you talk about it's a game of inches. To win at corner, it's like a game of centimeters, man. It's just the difference between making a play on the ball and a wide receiver ending up reeling it in and it's a 60-yard catch and a touchdown. I mean, the margin for error is so small. And if your fingertip were just a little bit longer on maybe you play it completely right, you were just the smallest fraction behind, it could be the difference between you giving up a touchdown and you having an incredible forced incompletion and looking like the man. So I would say that for these young guys, certainly you want them to approach the position from the right mentality, right? You don't want them to get too ahead of their skis, if you will. Like you said, like you don't want these guys to think like, oh, I made it, I'm the man, we won a Super Bowl, all that kinds of stuff. And I'm not saying that that's for sure the case with these guys. I haven't talked to them. I don't know them. I don't know follow as closely as you guys do. But I would also just say you do have to pump the brakes a little bit when evaluating corners because, I mean, look at A.J. Terrell. 2 years ago, this guy had one of the most shut-down seasons of any corner in the league. And then last year, he was one of the lowest-graded starting corners that we had in PFF. It was just night and day. And I think the truth is somewhere in between. In fact, I think the truth for him is a little bit more towards that really good corner shutdown status. But that's just what happens with the position. It's so up and down. Even the very best in the NFL will have stretches where it looks rough for them because of the nature of their job. So that's kind of the way that I would go into that. I think that obviously them struggling does not mean that they're going to struggle forever. And I just think that those defensive backs are more susceptible to that sophomore slump than other positions. So if it happens, I wouldn't grade it on the same scale as I would for other guys who might be playing on different sides of the ball or in different spots.
Visiting with Trevor Sikkema, let's talk about the Chiefs wide receivers. Last year, Sky Moore, rookie campaign. It is tough in an Andy Reid offense. That's been talked about a lot of, that sort of history that's there. Rookies and first-year players in Andy Reid's offense, it takes a little bit, especially the younger the player is. So not a surprise that, Sky Moore didn't have a huge production year. And, Juju Smith-Schuster was on the team. McCole Hardman was on the team. It's a different look at the wide receiver spot this year for the Chiefs. But Sky Moore in year one, what he did, and maybe even some expectations from Rashee Rice. They are different players. And, Rashee Rice had looked really good in the first couple of preseason games. And then, unfortunately, this last one had, some struggles with the drop passes and dropped the touchdown that has been on social media and stuff, and a younger guy. But those two players, did Sky Moore, do you expect a step forward for him? One in year two for Andy Reid, another in that he's now year two in his career. And then Rashee Rice, a different skill set of what you think his impact could be this year for the Chiefs.
Yeah, so one, I like the Rashee Rice pick. I think that this is a really nice landing spot for him. For Rice, I was a little bit lower on him than consensus simply because I looked at him and what he does really well, and I knew that it was just going to take some sort of a mental shift for him to really be successful at the NFL level. Because if you look at what he did in college, he was a guy who they would play on the line of scrimmage, they would play him at the X, they would play him on the sideline, and they put him in all these contested catch situations. And it's almost like he wanted to be this big 6'4", 6'5" wide receiver. And so he was trying to play this game of a much bigger possession receiver, and then he shows up at the combine, and he's 6 foot, 205 pounds. I mean, that's just not his game. He's not that type of player. But what he was at the combine and what he showed there is that he's explosive. And so I thought that it was going to be a position change for him to really get the most of his athleticism at the NFL level because it didn't really show up in the way that it was on his tape. So he was a very interesting eval in that regard. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's going to take a little bit of time for him to find exactly what he does well at the NFL level. I like him the most, given his athleticism and his explosiveness, as more of a slot or flanker type of a wide receiver that you use in motion, that you get off the line of scrimmage. So, he likes to be physical, and I like the fact he doesn't shy away from that, but I don't want that to be his bread and butter of his game because it doesn't have to be. He can be much more of a separation artist than I think that he even allowed himself to be at the college level. So I think it was always going to be a little bit of time for him to show out in the way that we saw him really stuff the stat sheet in college. So I think it's going to be a little bit of time for him. I think the drop passes, that was something that he dealt with a little bit in college as well. So for him, it was going to be a little bit more of a slow burn. When it comes to Sky Moore, I really want him to become the fully confident route runner that I know he could be. Man, when he was in college, he was absolutely cooking people with his routes off of his releases, whether it was short, intermediate, deep. I mean, he just had some of these defensive backs in a blender, guessing all over the place, and you saw so many receptions from Sky Moore where he was wide open because he was cooking a lot of these guys. And I think that it's tough to maintain that level of confidence, especially coming from the level of competition that he did, and really continue for that to succeed right away at the NFL level because everybody's more athletic, everybody's stronger, everybody's bigger. And so that separation does not come as easy, but I still think that it's there for him. I still think that his body control, the footwork, how he approaches attacking cornerbacks, all of that is still there for him to become a really great route runner at the NFL level. You mentioned Juju Smith-Schuster was there last year, and I felt like that was the role as the short, quick hit type of receiver, the guy who's going to win from the slot, win very quickly. That was the Sky Moore role. So I figured that as long as Juju Smith-Schuster was there, he probably wasn't going to be put in a situation where he was going to be most advantageous. That's Sky Moore. This year, I think it's different. I think the path has been cleared for him to be more of exactly what I think that he can be, which is that two-way go player who really stresses defenses out with his ability to go left or right.
I wanted to ask you before we let you go about a player that is not a Chief, but is a local kid, went to high school here, went to Clemson, number 8 pick to Arizona. Now he's a New York Giant. And we talk about, positionless football and using guys all over the field and sort of, this Swiss Army knife, this jack of all trades type player that you can use in different ways. Arizona, it didn't work out. In New York, Wink system, we'll see what happens. How would you use Isaiah Simmons? Was he misused in Arizona, which we've seen with Hassan Reddick in the past, but was he misused there? Is it a better fit for him with Wink Martindale's system? What do you think about now a fresh start for Isaiah Simmons in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, he was completely misused in Arizona, and I don't mean to be too harsh on it because hindsight's always 20/20, but it just felt like they should have been able to move on from him in the way that they were using him quicker. Because they draft him, they go, okay, you're going to play, safety. Okay, now you're going to play linebacker. Okay, now you're going to play slot. And none of those things worked. And you look at his athletic profile, and he's got the length, he's got the height, he's got that arm length to him, and he's incredibly explosive. Now, I understand that you would say, okay, well, he's only about 240 pounds, so we're not going to stick him on the edge. Tell him to gain about 10 pounds and put him on the edge. Come on. I mean, you use the guy in the most advantageous spot. And I think you already saw what Wink Martindale was going to do with this guy in his first preseason game with the Giants. That very first drive that he had against New York Jets, he already racked up one pressure, if not two. I can't remember if the second one was actually a pressure or not, but attacking the line of scrimmage, getting past the offensive tackle's shoulder, going straight through the running back, and forcing Aaron Rodgers and the quarterback to get off of their spot. That's what Isaiah Simmons does best. And it was baffling to me that Arizona was not more willing to make him a specialized pass rusher. Now, I wonder if they did not do that, because if they did, you're basically admitting, okay, we drafted this guy too high. Okay, this is kind of a draft failure, but I would rather get something out of him than not. Now, look, it's a lot easier for me to say sitting here at my computer desk than it is to be in the GM seat and really kind of admit that to the team and the organization and the fans that we whiffed on a top 10 pick that Isaiah Simmons was. So I know that it's easier said than done, but moving forward with him now in New York, I think that they are totally free to use his athletic gifts and strengths the way that it's most advantageous to the defense. And that, to me, is as a specialized pass rusher, and we already saw that they are willing to do that, which gets me really excited about his usage and his future with that team.
Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, and also NFL Stock Exchange and NFL Draft Podcast. Trevor, great stuff. Always appreciate you coming on the show, and certainly we'll be watching, following, and listening as, this season rolls along and on into next year with drafts and everything like that. So thank you for the time. Thank you for the information and the perspective as well. And enjoy the football season getting rolling in just about 10 days from now.
Yeah, I appreciate it, you guys, as well. Anytime.
All right, Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus and NFL Draft Stock Exchange, the Pro Football Focus podcast that he does there. Good stuff from him. And, it'll be interesting to see what FAU can do this year. Certainly he's going to be relied upon a lot more earlier than what was expected. Before we knew about the Charles Omenihu suspension, how long it was going to be. And, of course, when they drafted him and throughout the summer, the expectation Chris Jones would be there at camp and certainly would be with the Chiefs by Monday, August 28th, the day before cutdown day. Going to be needed a lot more. So we'll find out what happens with him. And then, of course, Sky Moore taking a step forward. That's the hope. And Rashee Rice, we'll see what he can be, but a struggle in the game on Saturday. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. We'll talk with Matt Verderam coming up at noon and get a Learn Funniest Best before the show is over as well. Here, heading up until 2 o'clock this Monday edition of The Zone at Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com. In the
Thank you to Trevor Sickam of Pro Football Focus and the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, NFL Draft podcast, and looking at some of the rookies for the Chiefs and what FAU has done. And, boy, there is a whole lot more on the plate of FAU. And that's going to be one of the storylines to watch as the season starts, because as it stands right now, are we in agreement that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Josh, but are we in agreement that we're past the point of Chris Jones playing what a regular 70 to 80% of the snaps would be if he had been at training camp all along, showed up, July 20th, 21st, whatever, and just a typical Chris Jones game? Or are we in agreement that we're past that point?
Yeah, I think so. I think if he signed an extension today, I think he'd play a good amount against the Lions, but probably a little less than his full workload, and every passing day shaves off a little more. So I think we're past that point.
Yeah, I think Nate Taylor said last night on Sunday Soundoff that can the Chiefs get what he would be focusing on is the Chiefs getting Chris Jones into camp and ready to go to where you can get 30 snaps out of him, mainly passing downs. If you can get 30 snaps out of Chris Jones to where it's second and long or third and medium to third and long throughout the game that Chris Jones comes on the field and just gives you pass rushing, that, hey, you'll take that right now. But, again, that sliding scale tilts more and more to fewer snaps as the days progress. And I don't know. I don't think it's a coincidence that FAU played the number of snaps that he did. I mean, he was number one on the defense. He was top 5 in the NFL in snaps played by rookies through the preseason. I don't think that's just some random coincidence that it's like, wow, what are the odds that FAU played 108 snaps in 3 preseason games? I say that as like, it's not just that he's a rookie. So it's like, of course you're going to play the rookies. B.J. Thompson played 44 snaps. 44. He's a rookie, and he needs a lot of work, right? He played 44 snaps. More than doubled B.J. Thompson's snaps did FAU. I mean, that he's a first-rounder, so you know he's going to play. But I think that's also the Chiefs saying, look, we got to get you up to speed, man. You might have been behind in the mini camp and things like that, but you're playing, and the only way you're going to get better is game reps. Karlaftis played 25 total snaps in the preseason. FAU played 108. I need to go back last year and see what Karlaftis played in the snaps, but that's not a coincidence. That's, Malik Herring played 95. I mean, Kando played 92, and I think that's probably like, let's really see what we have in Kando, because it's B.J. Thompson keeping him or Kando, and it may have been we're playing Kando more because we want to see if we even need to keep him.
Right.
And if not, we know we're keeping B.J. Thompson, and we know he's a project anyway, and we know at best it's going to be deep on the depth chart to come in for specific third and long passing situations. That's just interesting that Kando played 90-something and B.J. Thompson played like 40-something, but I think they're showing and saying how much is going to be on the plate of FAU early in the season, and maybe earlier than they wanted.
Yeah, the snap count thing is interesting because we're talking about really like when these snaps also happen. That also changes like how much it matters. So we're doing a little bit of like interpretation / trying to figure out just what the most logical reasoning behind all of it is. And for FAU, I think it is clearly that it is you just get live reps. You take some pass rush reps with the plan. You take some run defense reps and try to hold your own there and just look like an NFL player, go through reps that feel like NFL reps as many times as you possibly can. And again, if you're B.J. Thompson, you want to see him get work also, but you only have so many of these snaps against the higher remaining levels of competition as other teams. We haven't really talked about this because we haven't gotten too deep into the takeaways from the Chiefs' narrow win on Saturday. But it is harder to evaluate when your backups are playing another team's starters longer versus when your threes are going up against threes again. But really, for Felix, what I think it is hey, we see a path in which you are playing meaningful snaps very early this season, more so than with the B.J. Thompson, who is just going to be developmental regardless. And for Felix, I think it makes a lot of sense to say all we can do at this point is put you on the field in active situations and let you keep working on stuff, because eventually these games are going to come around with no Charles Omenihu, maybe no Chris Jones, and even if it's just Chris Jones, some of the time you're going to have to win even more matchups when Chris Jones isn't on the field. That is a valuable thing for these young guys, but specifically for Felix, I agree. This is a concerted effort for a good reason.
I need to amend he has the most snaps on the Chiefs on defense. I don't know if I said that or not. I was talking about the rookies as well, but on defense, he has the second most snaps, the rookie or the all players on defense for the Chiefs because Deion Bush got 50 snaps against Cleveland on Saturday. So Deion Bush passed up Felix. Felix had a decent lead on Deion Bush until this past weekend. So Deion Bush playing essentially the game.
It's kind of odd
against Cleveland.
Why did Deion Bush play so much?
Yeah, he played twice as many snaps as even Shamari Connor.
Is Mike Edwards on your? I mean, he played a lot more than Mike Edwards, I imagine, right?
Mike Edwards played
not much.
16 snaps.
Okay.
Deion Bush played 50.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we're in agreement they're going to keep 5 safeties, right? Or are they keeping 4 with Connor? And then 5 would be Bush.
And they're keeping 4.5. And because it depends on exactly how Shamari Connor gets used. If we're counting Connor as a safety, I think it's 5, absolutely.
See, and I think if we're counting cornerbacks, they typically keep 5. So that would be McDuffie, Snead, Watson, Williams. There's 4. And then they like Nick Jones.
Yes. I think that makes sense.
So if Connor counts as that, then is Nick Jones an IR, and they keep Deion Bush as the 4th safety, and you have 5/6 cornerbacks.
That could be a place to steal a spot.
I mean, yeah.
You got kind of a flex DB there between with Shamari Connor maybe being able to do a little bit of both.
Yeah. I was, my 53-man projection, Josh, which I did do yesterday. But
did you do one?
I did. I've got Nick Jones on the roster on the initial 53.
He has to make the initial one.
But does that mean that then he's placed on the IR and then Boydo or Halasi or DiCaprio Boodle that? Oh, doggone! There's an interception, by DiCaprio Boodle, which, by the way, is totally Andy Reid coming through and Patrick Mahomes. Doggone it, Herbie!
That's a great call.
Doggone it, Herbie! I mean, just Herbie, just doggone it. Doggone! There's an interception, Patrick.
Deion Bush is also in that
is he a veteran guy?
Veteran vested vet thing. So I don't know if it changes because his guaranteed money, off the top of my head here, I think his guaranteed money is more substantial than Blake Bell's. And so, but if he's coming back on the same base number, it wouldn't matter, I don't think. So he could also be a part of one of those little do-si-dos if the Chiefs need to do a little extra roster shuffling. Yeah,
and we got there talking about, Deion Bush talking about the snaps he played because of Felix and Udike Uzama. That's going to be a really interesting part about this Lions game. They're almost 7-point favorites. And there's a pretty decent chance that they play that Lions team without Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed, and Kadarius Toney.
When you say it like that,
I'm just saying, just throwing some things out.
No, I don't like it.
Just bringing up a few things that could be reality for this particular team. I still think they're better than the Lions, but if we go into that game and say your 2 best defensive players and maybe your best playmaker on offense, not, Travis Kelce is, but playmaker, just dynamic playmaker on offense is not going to be out there playing. It's a difference against a Lions team who's coming into this season thinking they've got a chance to win the NFC, and they're going to prove it on Thursday night against the defending champions. This is a chance to test ourselves to see where we are. Do we think we're championship caliber? Do we think we're good enough to win the Super Bowl? Well, that team is. That team you're playing is good enough to win the Super Bowl. They won it. They're hanging that flag. You want to dream about winning the Lombardi Trophy? You're going to be on the field with the team that's raising that flag that won the Lombardi Trophy. Where do you stack up against that team? The Lions are going to be ready to play. They're going to be ready to play, and it will be a rough Friday to open up the show talking about the Chiefs starting 0-1 and losing on the night that they were raising the banner and defending Super Bowl champs. And if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and guess that if those 3 guys miss, they would have been able to make some sort of an impact in the game with Snead, Kadarius Toney, and Chris Jones. And only 2 of those guys are dealing with injuries that would keep them out. The other one has an injury to the ego and what he probably feels is the wallet as well. And the Chiefs also, dealing with that whole thing with him of, just pay him, or Chris Jones saying, this is what I want. Like, there's 2 sides to this issue. It's not just one or the other.
First, Dylan, if you could just mark that into the last minute or so I can go back and grab Jason talking about the future where the Chiefs start 0-1. I think he said it's going to be a tough Friday. It sounded like a prediction to me, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll have that on hand.
Cut out the if. Just cut out the if. It's going to be a tough Friday. Chiefs start off 0-1. Yeah, just cut out the F part.
I think you said that hypothetical strongly enough that I will not have to take it completely out of context for it to be incriminating, which is that's really the goal of everything here.
Why not?
But I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that we are now talking about this potential future a week from Thursday where the Chiefs kick off their season with, I'll say it this way, their two most important defensive players and their third most important offensive player
in the group of players that you would decide from of the third most.
100%. I think that's probably true. Now, with Tony in the receiving group, we've talked about differently all training camp because he got hurt at the beginning of training camp. So you can say he's not their third most important player on offense anymore because they've had all this camp time where he hasn't been out there and all of that, and that's fine. But when camp kicked off, Tony was going to be the third most important offensive player on the Chiefs, behind Mahomes, Kelsey, and then, a large gap, but then Tony could have been the next man up. We talked, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago now maybe, about the money coming in on that game and it being, Chiefs -7, and I was telling you, look, I know that the Chiefs against the spread, they typically don't win against the spread, which is more about where the lines get set in the public than it is about the Chiefs, obviously, but they very rarely, or not very rarely, but more often than not, you're better off to take the points in a Chiefs game. But in week one, that's when Andy Reid has an entire offseason to plan for one team, and I have felt pretty good about the Chiefs after that long offseason, that first week matchup. I feel significantly worse about that now. I still think that they are the better team, but if the current roster, if the guys who have practiced, the guys who could have played in the third preseason game, if that's the exact same roster as we see in week one, I do think that we should be talking about like a 4.5-point line or something like that and not 7, because Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed and Kadarius Toney are all worth something there. That line got set when we talked about the line. Toney was still injured. We knew that was still up in the air, but I didn't expect to be here on either of those defensive guys, and Patrick Mahomes, having him on the offense changes everything, but defense still matters some, and your two best players on defense still matters some, even if you think maybe McDuffie's going to be deserving of passing Snead on that at some point this season. Right now, I'd like to have Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed for the Lions on Thursday.
Yeah, that would be great if those guys would be out there, but we'll find. I think there's a pretty decent amount of. There are some answers we'll get tomorrow as to how the Chiefs are feeling on some of these players. We'll certainly get some answers if we find out the Chiefs have to restructure some contracts to be able to September 7th be in good standing with the 53, right? So the 51 man, top 51, if they're looking at like $100,000 or $200,000 below the cap right now, and then to get to 53, they're going to need more than $1 million for their 53-man roster somewhere along the way. So is that a Chris Jones deal, or is that restructuring some contracts, Kelsey, a Tooney, or something like that along the way? That's going to be the sign that they're not getting something done with Chris Jones anytime sooner. They're not getting something done with Chris Jones before the NFL says, yeah, you have to actually be in compliance now with the total, with what your salary cap is now that you're going from 90 to 53 / top 51, all of that stuff, and then practice squad and how convoluted it can get from that point moving forward.
And even if he does report back and it's just, all right, I'll finish out this deal, then we'll figure it out next year. Now, that's just the world the Chiefs have to live in. Mm-hmm. They just have to care. The long-discussed assumption was you get him a long-term deal that then allows you to bring that cap number down. Now you can go sign Carlos Dunlap, or many, many moons ago, go sign Frank Clark. Remember that real conversation? It felt like, again, a year ago now. But if it does end up at the point of, all right, fine, I'll play this out, tag me, trade me next year, I'll get the contract I'm looking for next season. Now the Chiefs do have to figure out another place they can create some of that space for anything else they want to do. Not even just like for Dunlap. To operate, they're going to have to find that money from the Tooney, from the Kelsey kind of options, and even those are relatively thin right now. It'll be a lot messier.
Yeah, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. On the other side, we'll continue talking some Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid weighing in on Saturday night about the challenges and the process and the cut down and things like that. And some other takeaways from Saturday's game, that not as many positives this week as there was a week ago, with some of the main points we've been talking about and questions we had heading into this season. We'll do that as we continue rolling along. Matt Verderame will be our guest coming up at noon. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio.
I will continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, and Dylan Michaels. We'll talk with Matt Verderame coming up at noon from Sports Illustrated. Get his thoughts on this Kansas City Chiefs team. Preseason is over. The next big day being tomorrow, 3 o'clock, cut down day to the 53-man roster for the Kansas City Chiefs and see what different moves they can make and see these different positional battles that are going on as well. Let's hear from Andy Reid. He was asked after the game was over on Saturday afternoon about the cut down, the process, and the challenges that go along with that.
Yeah, so Brett will get with his guys tomorrow morning, and then the coaches will grade the tape, get that in for the coach's final evaluation on the guys playing, and then Brett will shake it all up and come out with the best group that we think can help us here. And this is the toughest day. I mean, that's when you have to make the cuts, because these guys have busted their tail through all the OTAs and then through the training camp. So then they all can't be here, unfortunately.
Every year is unique, but what's going to make this one difficult for you guys with what you've seen out there?
Yeah, I mean, there's some tough spots. Guys competing there at certain spots, and so we gotta make sure we make the right decision there.
Looks like wide receivers.
Yeah, potentially.
Maybe there.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, you got to look at numbers, and you have to, how many you're going to keep at each spot, and that's one of them. So you also have to include special teams. I mean, how do the guys help you on special teams? So
the wide receiver spot is going to be fascinating because the assumption has been all along that the Chiefs are going to keep 7 wide receivers. 7 wide receivers. They're not going to cut Justin Watson. MVS is on the team. Kadarius Toney's on the team. Rashee Rice is on the team. Sky Moore is on the team. Richie James damn sure better be on the team. And who am I missing here?
One Justin Ross.
Justin Ross. Yeah, Justin Ross is absolutely going to be on the team for
that's
sure.
7 now.
There's 7. So they are keeping 7 receivers. That's what we've said for a while. The Chiefs and Andy Reid have never kept more than 6 receivers on their team. And from Sam McDowell's article last week before the final preseason game, talking about the assumption of 7 wide receivers, that the Chiefs have never kept 7 wide receivers. And in 6 seasons with Andy Reid, going back to 6 seasons, last 6 seasons with Andy Reid, the 6th wide receiver on the roster for the Chiefs has a total of 7 catches. Total of 7 catches.
A total of 7 catches.
Yes.
In 6 seasons.
In 6 seasons, 7 catches.
Did you catch some of the names in the mix? I think it's a little bit instructive.
Yes.
And a little bit fun.
It is.
McDowell went through the list here. 2017. 6th man, Jehu Chesson, had 2 catches. 5th on the list, Chris Conley, had just 11. That's the number 5 receiver.
The number 5 receiver had only 11 receptions.
In 2016, DeMarcus Robinson had 5 offensive snaps all season as the 6th option. DeAnthony Thomas had 7 catches as the 5th. Frankie Hammond Jr. in 2015, he was 6th. He finished the season with 6 snaps on offense. And Jason Avant. What a time to be alive. Jason Avant was the 5th receiver. He had 15 catches. Still fewer than 1 per game. 2013, Chad Hall and A.J. Jenkins.
Yeah.
They're number 5 and 6. They caught 2 and 8 passes, respectively. They do not get production out of a number 6 receiver. They literally never have. Out of a 6. They're going to keep 7 this year? And the question is Justin Ross basically, are you happy to have him be a healthy scratch? Or who is going to be a healthy scratch? Because they're sure not going to activate 7 on game day, even with special teams being a part of it. You can't have 7 active receivers on game day, right?
No, you're not going to, which is
Probably.
kind of the point of, and I'm not going to rehash the argument because he's not even here to argue with us, but the sort of one of the points that I was making on the 53-man roster is, well, you're keeping Shane Bichelle or Blaine Gabbert, whichever on the 53-man roster, you do get that free activation on game day. That is absolutely right. But you also have to keep him on the 53. Well, it's like, okay, well, who would you take off then? Because whoever you're keeping over Shane Bichelle is going to be inactive anyway. Well, then there's no reason to keep 7 receivers because they won't activate 7 receivers. So why are you keeping 7? Well, it gives you the option of having different guys. If, let's say, I don't know, an injury-prone receiver may not be available on a certain day,
That's right.
name Kadarius Toney, or other guys that may not be available on a certain day, that then you go and you have this other positional group that you have kept. that gives you the flexibility of activating different guys on game day. Or a LaMichael Pirine when you've got an injury-prone running back room. That McKinnon has had injuries. Pacheco got a carry in the game against the Browns.
I'll carry.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire is injury-prone. And so is LaMichael Pirine somebody that you're going to keep on the team because you have a number of guys that have been banged up and have chances that they would be banged up. Well, here's the thing. They're not activating 4 guys. They don't activate 4 running backs on game day. They activate 3. They typically have 4 running backs on their roster, and they have 3 active on game day. So what's the point of keeping 4 running backs if you're only going to have 3 active on game day? Well, it gives you the option that, LaMichael Pirine may not be on your team if you release him. Therefore, if you need somebody on your team, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Jerick McKinnon or Pacheco is going to miss a game or 2, now Deneric Prince is third man up. Do you trust Deneric Prince to be the third man up? I don't know. Over LaMichael Pirine? Those are the questions that you have to ask when it comes to the 53-man roster, not just simply, but you get a free activation. You do, but what's more likely to happen? One of these 7 wide receivers, or hell, even 8, if Amir Smith-Marset makes the team, ends up playing and having some sort of a role this year with guys who can get injured, or the third quarterback playing for the Chiefs in a matter that in a game or snaps that would actually make a difference.
So here's my little counterculture little hot take before the cuts start rolling in. What I am circling now is for the Chiefs to get down to 13 total running backs plus receivers plus tight ends. I think 14's on the table, but it can't be 15. And this is sort of the space we've been operating in. So think about earlier in camp when you started doing the math on receivers and going, oh man, there's really 7 guys here when Justin Ross kind of showed himself. Then it was 4 tight ends with Jody Fortson, but now he's hurt. And so now, can Matt Bushman make the cut? And it was obviously 4 running backs with Deneric Prince being running back 4. I think the way that I'm navigating tough decisions here is to tell myself, all right, I can have 1, maybe 2 healthy scratches from that running back receiver tight end group. The flex group, I'll just call it from now. You can have 13 flex players and 1 that's a healthy scratch. Because like you said, last year it was Ronald Jones up until it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a unhealthy scratch, and then even by the Super Bowl, all of that.
Yeah.
You can have 3 active running backs. You can have 3 active tight ends, and then you can have 6 active receivers and 1 of them who's inactive. My hot take also on this a little bit is that if Kadarius Toney would have been healthy all camp, I wonder where Richie James's spot is. But it doesn't matter because he wasn't healthy all camp, and he hasn't been healthy at any point in his NFL career, so I think Richie James is safe. But if you're in a spot now where, as Matt said a week or 2 ago, NFL teams overrate their own running backs, they're the guys you see every day, you have them in your offense, all of that, I think you let go of LaMichael Pirine and Deneric Prince, let them run through waivers, and say, if you have a chance of hitting our practice squad, we'll have you in a second.
Yeah.
Because then if Pacheco can't go, if Clyde gets banged up, if you're limiting McKinnon's work, at any point, you can call one of those guys as a game day activation, and they hop right into the rotation. They have a much better chance of clearing waivers than Justin Ross does. Matt Bushman has a way better chance of clearing waivers than Justin Ross. So I think that might be a way that you can steal an extra roster spot here or there to make sure your trenches are where they're supposed to be. That's what I'm pitching there. 13 total flex guys, being Pacheco, Clyde, McKinnon as your running backs, Kelsey, Gray, and Bell as your tight ends, and then the 7 wide receivers.
Yeah, and even Bell might give you an opportunity to gain a spot somewhere.
Do a little swap around, absolutely.
With a little swap there with those things, yeah.
I think it's a way you can work through it. It's tough, though. And it depends on if you think that Pacheco could take a full workload in week 1, which I'm still not sure about. That might be why Pirine needs to make the active roster.
Yeah. And we're assuming there are 7 wide receivers, and those 7 wide receivers don't include Amir Smith-Marset.
Yep.
Who has looked the best out of all receivers. But you're right. Defense, time in the game, things like that. All those things certainly matter and can make a difference and play a role in that. But, man, he's looked awesome. And that would be somebody that you're simply moving on from. Well, you're not going to keep 8 receivers. I agree with that because the numbers are difficult to get to 7. somebody's going to have to be one of those number casualties.
Hey, Kansas City, are you looking for a place to stay on your staycation getaway? There's a space to play at the Inn at Meadow.
The Zone is brought to you by Guaranteed Foods, official sponsor of Family Mealtime. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Josh Brisco, Dylan Michaels. We'll talk with Matt Verderam here in just a little bit. Catch up with him as we'll talk some Chiefs football with him, and also his rankings of the 32 quarterback coach combinations and sort of those power rankings. Just because, as he wrote, historically speaking, you're not winning a Super Bowl, historically speaking, without a coach quarterback combination that is, top level. You certainly can, but again, history says it's going to be tough to do. Jeremy Fowler reporting that the Eagles defensive end Derek Barnett, through his agent Drew Rosenhaus, gauging the market for the potential to play more elsewhere. Per sources, Philly plans to keep Barnett, but understands the deep pass rush roster limits playing time. 2017 first-round pick should have trade value. This is one of those where, hey, we may have to cut this player, or we've got some numbers that we're dealing with, or maybe there's a cap relief if we trade him. You know what? We're allowing him to go engage interest because he would like the potential to play more elsewhere. We're doing this for him. We're allowing him to go out, and we don't want this. We're just being good teammates to him that will allow him to go out there and engage more playing time somewhere else, and we'd be willing to trade it for him.
I think everyone involved here has only altruistic tendencies, only altruistic reasons here.
Right. That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, everybody's just doing things that are good for everybody.
But, it might be good for everybody if they wanted to just go ahead and, send him, Kansas City's direction.
Whatever.
And figure out that cap situation later.
Also sort of dealing with, that whole cap situation that you talked about. Just kick that can down the road. Just down the road, and hopefully Chris Jones will pick it up on his way in. So, Chris, kick that can. Can you pick that can up while you're heading there? Yeah, it's on the way from Joe's to Arrowhead, to the facilities, please.
You won't pick it up for less than $1 million? Okay, well, then I guess I'll just go pick it up myself.
Sure, I guess. We'll kick it down the road, and then we actually got to go pick it up and bring it back, and then deal with some other players to be able to move some interesting things around. So, we'll talk with Matt Verderam here in just a little bit. Going back to the wide receiver conversation we were just having about the 6/7 wide receivers, and Sam McDowell talking about the sixth wide receiver having a total of 7 catches in the last 6 years for this Chiefs team. One of the things I was, curious about going back and looking is just who were the players? What was the health like? How many games did those different players play in? And going back to 2018, you had Tyreek Hill that played in 16 games. Sammy Watkins played in 10. Chris Conley played in 16. DeMarcus Robinson played in 16. And then Kemp was on the team and active for special teams and sort of the emergency guy. If you needed him, hey, that's fine. So 10 of the 16 games, you had Tyreek, Sammy, Conley, DeMarcus Robinson. 10 of the 16. The other 6, you had those 3. And then somebody else that, ultimately was available but wasn't going to be a primary target, especially when you have Kelsey and Tyreek, and even Chris Conley, and even DeMarcus Robinson after that. 2019, Tyreek Hill had the 12 games when he broke his collarbone against the Jags. So he played in 12 games. Sammy Watkins played in 14. DeMarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, and Byron Pringle played in all 16 games. So you had 12 of the 16 where you had Hill, Sammy, Robinson, Mecole, Byron. Well, I guess there was a crossover of a couple of games where you might have had Hill or Sammy. But regardless, Sammy played in 14, Tyreek Hill played in 12, the rest played in 16. When you got to those 5 players, if you're talking about, well, where do you get to 6? And then you had a guy like Kemp as an emergency, 6th guy that was a special teamer. 2020, Tyreek Hill played in 15 of the 16 because I believe they sat the final game. So I'm just going to count that as all.
Sure.
Robinson played in all 16. Mecole played in all 16. Sammy played in 10, and Byron Pringle played in 13. So you had some guys that were more injured that year, and it still didn't result in a 6th wide receiver having a huge season. 2021, you had Tyreek Hill for 16, McCole for 17, Robinson for 17, Pringle for 17, and Kemp for 16, as, again, a special teams guy. But all but one game, those guys all played together. Last year's where it gets interesting. Juju for 16, MVS 17, Watson 17. There's 3. Sky Moore 16. There's 4. McCole for 8. There's 5. And Kadarius Toney for 7. There's 6. It's almost like McCole and Kadarius combined for 1.
They only overlapped, what,
Right.
1 game, 2 games?
But that's sort of the point when you've got injury-prone guys.
Right.
And do you get to where, okay, we would keep typically 6, but if we've got Kadarius Toney that's injured, we keep another guy that guy and Toney combined to give us essentially 6 players, even though it's 7 total, because you do have somebody that's injury-prone. Sammy Watkins was injury-prone. He was. He had to deal with those things when he was on the Chiefs. Again, 10 games, then 14 games, then 10 games for Sammy Watkins in the 3 years. Like, he was missing a lot of games. But they also had a primary number 1 guy in Tyreek who was force-fed the ball for the most part. Now you've got an eclectic group. Now you've got who's your number 1. I don't know. Sort of depends on the day. And that's what's fascinating about last year. When you see 6 guys, and those 6 players, Kadarius Toney, McCole Hardman, like last year is the year that you would look at and go, all right, well, they used 6 guys. And then in the AFC Championship game, they had those different injuries, and that was with Justin Watson even being inactive. Then they were really up against it. Because, again, we go back to inactives and things like that. The makeup of this roster, and with no Juju Smith-Schuster, and with no McCole Hardman, and throwing in a rookie in Rashee Rice, you look at it and go, well, if there's no clear roles defined, is that then the year if you feel like 1 through 7 is kind of interchangeable, is that the year you keep 7 and those roles may be different week in and week out? This guy goes down, can't be available. Hey, we got 7 anyway on the roster. This guy can step up. We got 6 guys out there. We're going to try to utilize their skill sets in all different ways. Justin Ross is going to be available for, let's say, 13 snaps in a game. Those 13 snaps, he's going to run these specific routes, and he's going to be a difference maker while he's out there. Justin Watson is there just to make sure everybody else runs and has their routes that are the integrity of the overall play, just in general. Sky Moore should be taking a step forward and be a target. MVS, we know what his role is going to be. Rashee Rice is a rookie, but maybe he and Justin Ross are sort of sharing those duties of Rashee Rice, we're going to get you out there for 15 to 20 snaps. Ross, we're going to get you out there for 12 to 15 snaps. Kadarius Toney, how healthy is he? Right. So those circumstances sort of change the calculus a little bit of looking, and I appreciate Sam McDowell doing the work of going back and looking and saying, okay, they're going to keep 6 or 7. Will it matter? Because history says they're not using those guys. Same thing with the third quarterback, but we can get that in a second.
Well, and so, I mean, you touched on, like, with the injuries and everything. It's also why I've mentioned Richie James not to start another fight with you, because now I see how you get. It's like a Wolverine at full moon, but
not at all.
Or a werewolf. You know how Wolverines at full moons are still there's just still Wolverines, and that's still pretty scary.
Yeah.
But
even at midnight,
I think Richie James just has a little bit of redundancy with Kadarius Toney, where, again, if you said, like, yeah, Kadarius Toney he physically is Tyreek Hill in terms of injuries and holding up, right? Well, in that case, yeah, maybe Richie James never gets signed to this team, honestly. But you also have that void of the lack of a true number 1 receiver as things stand right now, and maybe Sky's the closest, and maybe Rice is second, and maybe Justin Ross is 3rd or 4th on that list. But there's at least this vision for the future of, well, even if he's not a huge impact player right now, there is a long-term investment here that might help the Chiefs not have to spend a 2nd-round pick on a receiver next year. Because next year, maybe it's, oh, hey, you know what? This is going to be the Moore, Rice, Ross little trio of first-round talents that we got with 2 second-round picks and an undrafted free agent bid. Maybe that's how it shakes out for them, but I do think there is some flexibility in that. Speaking of flexibility, Matt Verderam will join us at 12:20, fellas.
Oh, cool.
12:20 today. We'll go ahead and just move him back a few, and then he'll be good to go. Then we can ask him all these questions also about the Chiefs receivers. I bet he has opinions.
He probably does. Should they keep 6? Should they keep 7? Should they keep 8? That's the question I have.
I do still think we ran out of time last hour before you got to tell me if I'm really, really smart or if I'm a big dumb idiot, which
Smart.
is my favorite game for us to play.
I'm going smart.
The cut both running back. This is I'm testing my own running backs don't matter sort of beliefs here. Cut both running backs, get either or both of the practice squad. That I think is where I'm landing on a roster game. Do you like that philosophy, or is the gap large enough for you in the preseason where P. Ryan has enough distance over Deneric Prince that it's worth keeping P. Ryan on the active roster to make sure he doesn't get sniped?
I think you gauge what's going on around the NFL, and that's what they're doing right now. And Brett Veach talked about that. I think Bergazzi's talked about that. Berganzi's talked about that. That you're looking at every roster in the NFL and what their depth chart is, and guys that may be released, waived, guys that may be traded, guys that they may have an influx or they may have a number of players there that they're not going to take somebody that you're going to cut. Okay, so we can eliminate this or this or this or these running backs. If we were to release P. Ryan and Deneric Prince, what teams do we have to worry about in the waiver process? So they would have a pretty good idea. So if those guys are both waived, I think they're probably confident that they would both return. If they feel like there is somebody out there that is going to snatch up LaMichael P. Ryan or Deneric Prince, then this is a big deal. The question is, if there's somebody of value that you feel like is going to be on the team that you think has to be on the team, are you waiving or cutting that guy so that a fourth running back you hope will clear waivers to be on your practice squad? Because if he was that important, you'd keep him as the fourth running back.
Right. Where I'm at.
If you're going to waive him, then you don't feel like he's so important that you can't afford to lose him, or he's not interchangeable with somebody else that's out there.
That it's more important to keep Darian Kennard, or let's use B.J. Thompson. You talk about like defensive line depth. He's another one of those guys that you're probably not expecting to see play very much this year. But where do you want to hold that developmental piece? Who is worth it? And I think a lot of these guys we haven't talked about as much, kind of back in the rookie class, all are in a similar space right now. It's going to be fascinating.
Well, and the question also is like, who's got a better chance of helping you win games this year? Is it LaMichael P. Ryan, or is it Shane Bichelle? And again, it gets back into that conversation, and I'm not going to relitigate that. It's just the point that I bring up of, you do have to have him on the 53, which is fine. You get the extra or free game day activation for your third quarterback. In Andy Reid's entire tenure with the Chiefs as the head coach, the third quarterback on the roster has played 4 snaps total.
They were even keeping 3, although they've kept 3 every year except for 2020 and 2021. I'm looking at this great little graph we talked about a couple weeks ago from Joseph Heffner on Twitter. Did a great little data viz here.
And they didn't feel like they were going to be able to keep Shane Bichelle.
Right.
So I think they kept Bichelle last year, right? As the 53?
Yes, they did. I think they ended up calling him up shortly into the season in 21.
And so,
I think I got my right.
He didn't play. He hasn't played. The 4 snaps, do you know what the 4 snaps are that the Chiefs have had for their third string quarterback on their roster that has actually taken snaps?
I mean, you're not going to let me sort of count this being Matt Moore, I guess, right? Because he was the third quarterback that they had on the roster at one point, but he was added after he got hurt. So.
As the 53-man roster.
But no, I don't know when those 4 snaps came.
2017, week 17. Patrick Mahomes was pulled from the game because they had the lead. Tyler Bray went in there for 4 snaps.
They took Tyler Bray back out again.
Yeah. Those are the 4 snaps
that this weekend.
The 4 snaps that a third-string quarterback has played for the Chiefs under Andy Reid.
I like Tyler Bray. I want that to work.
Now let's examine the 4th running back, on a team that has injury-prone running backs. I think there's a better chance that guy would make a difference than a Shane Bichelle. You just don't see that guy play ever.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time that third-string quarterback played is when the first-string guy got the day off.
Right.
That's why the third-string guy played. Now, if you're saying, okay, well, Blaine Gabbert's going to miss a couple of games here or there for some reason, well, then Shane Bichelle could be useful. But again, if we're legit talking about missing a number of weeks for your first-string quarterback, I mean, if you get down to the third-string guy, I know it was cool, before he had this great game against Arizona, but Are we still in love and say that the Chiefs, there's no way they could possibly let Shane Bichelle go after watching him this past weekend?
No, I would say, though, it is definitely a lot easier to grab a running back off the street to step into a role than a quarterback off the street to step into a role.
Agreed.
Just on like your comfort in the offense and all of that. So
totally agree.
That's a little thing. Look, I would love to spend the next 15 minutes talking more about the third quarterback, but if we don't take a break soon, we're not going to have time for Matt Verderam next segment.
About the third
and he's ready to join us next, Jason.
All I'm saying is that if I had a choice between Bichelle and Amir Smith-Marset, I'll take ISM. Now imagine if they cut Justin Ross for Shane Bichelle. You want to talk about a town turning?
At that point,
that's a screeching halt U-turn. Turn around. That's the police officer. Boom, flash cherries, spin around quickly, go the other way, and you go, whoa, what's going on way back there? That's what that is.
Who would you rather have on the roster, Patrick Mahomes or Blaine Gabbert and Shane Bichelle? 913-381-0810.
That's next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by...
WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Josh Brisco, Dylan Michaels. We head up until 2 o'clock. We got some Learning Funny Best coming your way before the show is over on this Monday, the final Monday before a game week in the NFL. Joining us now, Matt Verderam, Sports Illustrated here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Matt, what's up, man? How are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
I am doing just fine. I appreciate you joining us as always. Let's start with this. The agents were here in Kansas City at Joe's Kansas City Barbecue, so that clearly means a lot. What are you hearing, if anything, on the latest with Chris Jones and the Chiefs and a report date time, whatever it might be, as of 12/22 on August 28th?
I mean, I think we're pretty much to the witching hour now. Like, if Chris Jones doesn't show up in the next, 24 hours, maybe it's 48 hours, I don't think week one's happening. Like, even if he reports in time, maybe best case scenario for the team and Chris Jones is he plays like a pass rush package against the Lions. They're not going to play him 90% of the snaps if he's just not ready. And that's not to say that he's not training away from the team. I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's in great shape. But, like, there's a difference, as Steve Spagnuolo pointed out last week, between being in shape and being in football shape. Chris Jones has not played a down of football with the Chiefs since the Super Bowl. So I would say that we're probably to the point now where it's either, hey, look, you show up and maybe there's an opportunity here to get a little bit more in a weekend of practice and get ready. Otherwise, it looks like the Lions are going to catch a pretty good break, either not seeing Chris Jones at all or barely seeing Chris Jones.
Yeah, and I do wonder, like, what point, when you say the witching hour of just, like, maybe even not even playing or certainly not playing the number of snaps that would be typical of a Chris Jones game if he would have showed up, July 20th, right, 21st or whatever, where he's going to play 70, 80, 90% of the snaps, depending how close the game is. But getting to the point of, okay, now we're talking about whether you play or not or some limited role. Like, I do wonder, like, when does he have to be in Kansas City and not even in camp, just around the team, to where you can say, all right, you can get something out of him. You can get 15 to 20 snaps out of him that are going to be pass rushing situations. And when you activate the guys that you have on your team overall on game day, if he's one of those guys that's active, you're not wasting a spot and feeling like you're going to be in a tough situation because he's playing if you only get 15 to 20 snaps. Like, at what point does it have to be by the weekend, early next week, to say, okay, you can get something out of him before it's just, you'll see him week 2 against the Jags?
I mean, I think we're probably literally a day or two. They're weeks from the game on Thursday.
Yeah,
it's not like your game's on Sunday, so you're there. I mean, you're to the point. And look, I got to tell you, if you're the Chiefs, you certainly want Chris Jones, and you want him for every snap you can possibly get. He is a force of nature. Nobody would argue that. Same point. Every game that he misses, a tag next year becomes cheaper. Every game that he's not reporting to the team for is $1 or $3 million that number goes down next year when they tag him, if they tag him. So if you're Kansas City, are you totally devastated by it? I mean, if let's say he misses, let's just say this thing keeps going and he misses 3 weeks, they're still favored in all those games. They're massive favorites against Chicago. They're significant favorites against Detroit. They're slight favorites against Jacksonville, but that's a game that where I think you'll look at it and go, all right, the Chiefs could score 38 points if they have to and try to win it that way. Like, if you're Kansas City, you want Chris Jones. I mean, that's your first, second, and third option. That's what you want. But if he's not there, there's a real world where they just go 3-0 anyway, and it becomes a lot cheaper to slap the tag on him next year. So I don't know that Jones has as much leverage as he did a couple weeks ago when they were in camp and there was still this negotiation. Now it's like, okay, well, if you're not here, you're not here. I mean, Andy Reid basically said as much a week ago.
Yeah.
I just think at some point the leverage starts to diminish for Jones, and I think we're at that point.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to ask you was, where's the leverage at? Does Chris Jones have leverage, or is it all essentially on the Chiefs side to where they say, all right, man, if you're going to sit out, you can sit out, but you're costing yourself money this year that you're never going to get back. And if you play this year on this contract, And we either franchise tag you next year and then we can play you one more year. So now we go year to year, or we can offer you a long-term deal, but it's not going to be as much as we offer you now because now you're a year older. Like the last opportunity Chris Jones has to get this amount of guaranteed dollars and not lose game checks is right now before, next Thursday. And I would say to not lose game checks and to get a long-term deal and stay in Kansas City is now through Thursday because they could franchise and trade him next year if another team wanted to pay him a lot of money, more than what the Chiefs are offering. But again, that wouldn't be in Kansas City. That if you're wanting long-term guaranteed dollars and in Kansas City, it's pretty much now or never.
But, Jason, to me, this is the bottom line for him. Like, you're never getting paid more than what you're getting right now. Never. It's never happening. You just finished third in Defensive Player of the Year voting. You were a superstar on a Super Bowl winning team. You're still in your 20s. It's going to be the last year you're ever in your 20s. Like, if you're Chris Jones, whether or not the Chiefs offer 27.5, 28, he wants more than that, that's fine. He can want whatever he wants. I'm not saying he shouldn't ask for the moon. But he is never getting more than this. The idea that he's going to play this year out, then he's going to be in his age 30 season. What if he's every bit as dominant this year, but the counting stats just aren't there, and he goes from 15.5 sacks to 8.5 or 9? That's still a great year for a defensive interior lineman. But you're going to have teams going, okay, well, now he's 30, and he had a down year compared to what was an unbelievable year prior. To me, if you're Jones and you don't sign an extension, it's a colossal mistake. I don't understand. Like the idea that he's going to get paid more next year, he would have to have a duplicate of last year. And as great as he is, what are the odds that he's going to be a top 3 Defensive Player of the Year finalist, win a Super Bowl, and have 15.5 plus sacks? And by the way, if he does all that stuff, he's still a year older. Like I think at some point you get the best deal you possibly can out of the Chiefs, and you just say, okay, that's great. I'm the second highest paid defensive tackle in NFL history, and I'm good. I don't think that sitting out games and waiting it out, I just think it's going to end up costing him a lot of money in the long run.
What's also not being, I think, even acknowledged or counted or part of this discussion from Chris Jones' side is the possibility that, so what if he has a season that's good, but not nearly as dominant and incredible that it was last year, which the timing is great for him to try to capitalize on the best season of his career when he can go and get more money. Then that's great. But the possibility that Aaron Donald comes out and has an Aaron Donald type season and is in conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. And what if Quinnen Williams goes and gets his new money and just goes berserk for the Jets? And now you're 26-year-old Quinnen Williams, who's only making $24-25, and Aaron Donald was so much better than Chris Jones, and now Quinnen Williams is almost as good as Chris Jones. Well, are we paying Chris Jones, 30-year-old, $4 or $5 million more than the 26-year-old Quinnen Williams is making?
No. Jason, it's a great point, and I'm glad you made it because it was literally going to be the next thing I was going to say. Like, look, what if Jeffrey Simmons goes out in his first team All-Pro next year?
Yeah.
Entirely possible.
Yeah. Any of those guys that just signed that contract.
Yeah, Dexter Lawrence. Now all of a sudden, even if you're the same guy, but your counting stats aren't as good as those guys, teams are going to look at you and go, well, maybe you're on the downside a little bit. Maybe you're the third or fourth best defensive tackle. Even if he's not, even if he's still absolutely the same guy he's ever been, perception is reality in life. And that is a situation where you look at it and go, all right, well, you're not going to get $30 million. Like, I know there's always this argument on the other side, like, well, the cap goes up. Oh, that's nice. He's still not getting $30 million a year if that happens. I mean, at some juncture, I just think if you're Jones, look, to me, this really isn't that hard. Like, he should be the second highest paid defensive tackle. He, as great as he was a year ago, he's not Aaron Donald. Nobody in the history of the league is Aaron Donald. But he's better than all the rest of these guys, and he should be paid as such, both in fully guaranteed money and average annual value. And if the Chiefs are going to offer him, let's just say, 28 a year and 75 to 80 million guaranteed, like, that's fair, in my opinion. I don't think it's reasonable to expect Kansas City to pay 30 plus a year and 90+ million in guarantees. As great as Chris Jones is, if I'm Brett Veach, I'd say, listen, Chris, we love you. We'll play this year out. We'll tag you next year and either trade you for a bunch of picks or just play out the tag. Because at that point, you're not losing any money. It's 2 for $61 million.
Yeah.
That's where I would be at if I'm the Chiefs.
And we get to go year by year and see where you're at
Right,
after
and
2
there's
more
no
years.
long-term commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Verderham's our guest. A couple of more for you. How concerned are you about L'Jarius Sneed and still not practicing and hasn't practiced since July 28th and missed all the offseason OTAs and minicamp and everything with the, quote, managing his knee?
Oh, concerned. I mean, I think if you're not concerned, you're probably burying your head in the sand a little bit with this. You're concerned. Now, I don't think it's going to be like he's up in a year, but look, here's the benefits the Chiefs have. They're very deep at corner. They have a lot of corners who can play. And with McDuffie, they have a guy who can go in the slot. I'll tell you, the Chiefs are extremely high on Shamari Connor, very high on him. So they're not afraid to put him in the mix right away. He can play corner. He can play safety. So in that regard, they're fortunate that they kind of have insurance. But L'Jarius is a very good player. I think the Chiefs are in a spot that only a few teams really are. You know, maybe they, the Eagles, maybe even Cincinnati. They're so good. They'll probably win most of their games, even if Jones isn't there early, even if Snead has to sit out for a while. Like they care about who's there come Thanksgiving and beyond. Like that's just how those types of teams look at it. So in that sense, they have a lot of time. But yes, is there concern? Sure. Anytime a guy's sitting out with a knee injury and he's been out, frankly, at this point, pretty much the entire offseason, it's concern.
Yeah. You know, Matt Verderham's our guest, Sports Illustrated. You put together the list of the elite coach, elite quarterback combinations for this year. As you put together that list, anything you glean, take away? Like, were you surprised at maybe a ranking here or there, higher or lower, that you ended up coming up with this, coach quarterback combination in the NFL?
I think the thing that surprised me, honestly, was just how tough it was to rank the coaches after like the top 6 or 7. There's just a lot of good coaches. There really are. I mean, even a guy like, to me, I think Kevin Stefanski's a good coach. Kevin Stefanski's probably ranking in the bottom half of the list. There's just, and then there are other guys it's hard to rank him, like Dan Campbell. You know, I like Dan Campbell, but at the same point, like, he hasn't proven it yet. So there's that. The other thing was probably just the discrepancy in some of the AFC teams. You know, Aaron Rodgers, really high rank for a quarterback. Salva, I think I ranked him like 24th. The Pats and the Steelers, great ranking for the coaches, really low ranking for the quarterbacks. The Broncos, same thing, where Peyton's higher. Obviously, Wilson's way down after what he did last year. But it was interesting just to see how many teams there's a huge discrepancy. I think there were only 3 teams that I had where both were in the top 10. The Rams, who are, unfortunately for McVay and Stafford, they just don't have the roster around them. The Ravens, who were second on my list in their total score, and then the Chiefs, who are 1-1 in both cases. But it's a rare thing. I was thinking about it the other day. How many teams have ever had the best quarterback and the best coach in the NFL at the same time? Certainly Brady Belichick. And after that, Montana and Walsh. There's not many. I mean, you're talking, you can count them on one hand.
Yeah. It's starting off with who's the best quarterback in the league at that time, and then just look at the coach. Okay, not the coach. Move on and go to the next one.
Yeah. Not many.
Yeah, it might be Andy Reid. It might be those 3 that you just mentioned right now. The Chiefs have that. Matt Verderham, and you know what? And we got to get to the bottom of whether or not there's going to be 4 running backs or 8 wide receivers or how many different defensive backs. That's really the big deal that we've got to worry about with the Chiefs. While they have the best quarterback and best coach in the NFL, boy, these are rich people problems. Is what we're dealing with right now in Kansas City. Thank you, Matt Verderham. Appreciate it, brother, being able to join us today. Enjoyed the list there at the Monday Morning Quarterback. I would implore people to go and check that out. Matt, you're the man. Appreciate it, sir.
Hey, thanks a lot. Take care.
Absolutely. There's Matt Verderham. He's got the list there. Historically speaking, at the Monday Morning Quarterback and Sports Illustrated, almost impossible to win the Super Bowl without an elite coach and elite quarterback. So Matt Verderham put together his ranking for 2023. That's up there. You can go and check that out. But 3 teams in the top 10 of both quarterback and coach combination in his ranking, and that being the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Rams. Have both the top 10 quarterback in his mind and a top 10 coach in his mind. One man's opinion. Certainly, I think Bengals fans would argue and say, whoa, Zach Taylor's in the top 10. But then you start to get into, okay, well, who are the coaches that are in the top 10 that you would take out of the top 10, all of that stuff. But that's certainly interesting. And yeah, he said this is the witching hour, getting to the witching hour with Chris Jones if he's going to be playing week 1. It's getting close to the time where you got to figure out what you're going to do. You know what, or get off the pot with Jones and the Chiefs. How much do they look at week 1 as being as important as maybe how much does Chris Jones look at week 1 and the $1 million he'll be giving up as being that incredibly important? I think there's probably one side that views week 1 and the Lions as more vital and important than the other. And I think that would be Chris Jones' side that views week 1. And as a fan, you may look at it and go, oh, the Chiefs are just going to give away a game. No, I think they believe they can win with the players that they have. They're not the ones losing $1 million per game. They may lose a game. Is that going to cost them a Super Bowl? Well, in week 1, no matter what, guaranteed it doesn't. It's guaranteed to cost Chris Jones $1 million. That much we know is a guarantee. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, Dylan Michaels. We head up until 2 o'clock. We got some Learn Funniest Best coming up in the next hour. Mick Schaefer has a charity golf tournament because he is a charitable individual.
I believe that he's playing golf right now.
I believe that children are our future. I think we should teach them well and let them lead the way.
Just not directly behind Mick.
That's right.
Just
But he is
dangerous place
doing
to
it.
be.
He is doing it for charity. That's what he does.
That's what he told us for
Very
sure. It's
charitable
definitely, there's no doubt in my mind that is what he told us he was doing today.
Yes, he had to play golf today for this charity. And in fact, I believe the charity would probably have gone broke and bust if Mick didn't play today.
We got a trade, Jason.
There's a trade in the NFL or Major League Baseball.
An NFL trade. I think the MLB deadline, I don't know, went by at some point recently.
What?
Ian Rappaport, source. Cameron Dicker won the Chargers kicking job.
Dicker the kicker.
And Dustin Hopkins is being traded to the Browns, which makes sense if you were watching Chiefs-Browns on Saturday.
Wasn't that guy like a 4th-round draft pick last year?
Not
this year, but last year for the Browns?
I'm not sure. That's a Dylan question. He might know that off the top of his head.
Dylan,
I just know it was ugly.
Okay, am I missing something as to why Dylan would know that off the top of his head?
He just knows every football thing, so that just knows something he might know.
All right. I didn't know if maybe he was like a closet Browns fan.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Oh, God, no. God, no.
Okay, I didn't.
But I'm seeing that it was 2022 was his rookie
Cade
season.
York, 4th-round pick, kicker from Louisiana State University, otherwise known as LSU.
So now they're going to have a 4th-round pick and maybe a 6th or 7th invested in the kicking position?
Yeah, I wonder what they're trading. What are they? It didn't say the details or anything.
Don't
just
yet
that they're
have the
trading for
details, but
Dustin Hopkins.
You know I'll bring you the details as soon as we get them.
Former Steeler.
Hot stove season.
Dustin Hopkins.
2025 7th-round pick to the Chargers.
So they have spent a 2022 4th-rounder and a 2025 7th-rounder on their kicker.
That's right. And the 4th-rounder is the one who they are good with after further review. Thank you very much. We'll see you never.
The Chiefs spent a practice squad spot, or took a practice squad player from the Panthers.
Carolina Panthers, baby.
Former Georgia Tech kicker and Harrison Butker to get their kicker, while also exchanging what would have been an iconic continuation number in Kansas City of 5 and exchanging that for 15 by keeping Cairo Santos at the time as the kicker. So they have exchanged the continuation of 5 for number 15. So now we got 5 and 15 in Kansas City, not just 5. 5 and 15, and then the cap hit for Harrison Butker. That seems to be fine.
I think the way that the Chiefs did it worked out pretty good. Yeah.
I like it.
Would I live in a different world, maybe if I could have made a deal with some sort of genie to give Patrick Mahomes the number 5 back and maybe have the Chiefs have worse kicking over the years, I would think about it.
You wouldn't do that?
I would think about it.
Man.
I would have to consider it because I do think Mahomes wearing 5 would have been just like slightly cooler. But things have gone pretty all right with 15.
Mm-hmm.
And Butker, I believe, if memory serves, kicked some field goals in the playoffs that have mattered. So I guess we can deal with it. I just can't believe Cairo Santos robbed us of a cooler thing.
I have to go back and look to see if he has made any significant kicks in the postseason.
Let me hold on really quick. Hold on. I'll Google it.
Looking, digging.
Oh, Google says yes.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, Google says several.
Just said yes. Is it a website? Has Butker made significant kicks in the playoffs and just a big flashing yes?
Yeah, I actually went to Bing. I went to Bing.com and then I typed Google search. Did Harrison Butker have big playoff postseason kicks / performances / moments? And then I spelled it a few different ways. I wrote Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City Chefs.
Yeah, I went to has Harrison Butker kicked big field goals in the postseason.com.
Let me see how much that costs on GoDaddy.
Then it said yes. So there you go. The Bengals spent a 5th-rounder on their kicker, which is actually pretty good. I mean, if you're going to spend a 5th-rounder, you would hope he'd be pretty good, and not the Browns a year later are cutting their 4th-rounder.
What was his nickname? Easy Money Mac or whatever? Is that
McPherson? I don't know what the nickname was.
Briscoe's right.
Is it Easy Money something?
Yep.
Why do I have that in my brain? See, that's what I wish I could if I could forget that Evan McPherson's nickname is Easy Money Mac, but I could get the quadratic formula. I think that'd be better.
I mean, has anybody?
Was that A squared, B squared, C square? Was that one?
Has anybody who looks like they went to Cranbrook And is 5'10", 180 been nicknamed Easy Money?
Money Mac, I guess. Not just Easy Money Mac. Money Mac.
Again.
It's been cash, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Money Mac. Dude looks like he's straight out of Central Casting for Cranbrook Private School.
Who was the Chargers
5'10", 180.
kicker that trademarked a nickname and then immediately fell from grace as soon as he did that? It was Money Badger. That's right.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about Money Badger.
I totally forgot about Money Badger.
Oh, man. What's Money Badger's real name? Hold on. It's in here.
Something Badgley.
Michael Badgley.
Yep.
Marvin Badgley.
Yeah, no, it's Michael.
Makes more sense.
Michael. I don't remember Money Badger.
Yeah, it was great. It was a
No
great
kidding.
brief moment. It was no Legatron. That one I think is I think the best kicking name of all time. I think I will personally nominate Legatron. That's really hard to beat.
Let's see, where's he now? Oh, he's with the Titans. Money Badgley. He's with the Titans. So there you go. Now that we got that figured out.
Sure, it's not Marvin.
No.
You're thinking of a basketball player.
Nope.
I was doing a bit, guys.
Sorry, I stand corrected. On August 27th, 2023, Michael Badgley was released by the Titans.
Okay.
So he's making less money, Badger, now than he was a couple of days ago. So he was released yesterday.
Did we just figure out earlier this week that
Probably.
that Greg the Leg is still out here doing it somewhere? He's still in New York. Look at him.
I knew he was still doing it because I'm going to follow Greg the Leg for a while. I mean, come on.
It really is unfortunate that he has two good nicknames, and occasionally Greg the Leg robs Legatron of its deserving place at the mountaintop.
I've only known him as Greg the Leg. Mama call him Greg the Leg. I'm going to call him Greg the Leg.
Missouri Western.
Legatron sounds awesome, though.
Missouri Western Zone.
I know. That's what I said.
Completely forgot about that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I'm always going to follow Greg the Leg. I mean,
just thought you were a fan.
West. Well, I mean, it's my first college for 5 minutes.
Sure. No, look,
but
I mean,
it's one of the locals. It's MIAA school, so, you'll follow that. And he's been pretty awesome. It's not just like a cup of coffee from an MIAA player that played, in the NFL. He's played for a very long time.
Your giant tattoo of the griffin in the shape of Missouri logo that you've got on your pec is remarkably well done.
It's not true. It's a Bearcat.
You got a Bearcat on one pec, and
it says OAB AAB is what it says.
You got a Bearcat on one and a griffin on the other.
OAB AAB right across the paw, right there. I can show you right now.
I don't want to.
I'll just unbutton this shirt.
No, don't show Twitch.
Just unbutton this T-shirt.
If you want to go ahead and tear that 810 T-shirt into two like the Hulk, I do think. Are we framed up for that, Dylan? Just in case Jason decides to Hulk out on Twitch.
We're good.
Yeah, I mean, if I would have already pre-cut it a little bit,
I bet you could.
If I would have already had the perforated middle of the shirt like the Hulk, then yes, I would.
You think that's the biggest difference between you and the Hulk?
Yeah,
is the perforation in the shirt.
Yeah, one, I'm not a maniac. He's a Hulkamaniac.
But we're both wearing Charlie Hustle shirts also, so that we're not quite on we're just on the wrong side of the I'll kill a shirt for a bit territory.
No.
Like they're too comfortable. I like these.
No, I like this shirt.
Dylan, what kind of shirt are you wearing?
We're
That's
both-
also a Charlie Hustle shirt.
Charlie Hustle, yeah.
All right, no one's tearing our shirts today.
The Hulk and I both real Americans. So,
if the Hulk
I fight for what's right.
If the Hulk wore
Fight for
Charlie
your life.
Hustle, I feel like
Would he be just
he would just be in a
standing there
T-shirt?
like,
Yeah,
It's the guy that was like, I'm gonna rip this phone book.
Yeah.
Later, when I feel better, I'm just a little like I went for a swim earlier today, so my muscles are a little used up. But next time I'm gonna do that.
it's just so comfortable and so stretchy that I think it would be. I think we just see the Hulk out here getting it done with a big KC heart on his chest. Just throwing Loki into the ground.
Right. As we wrap up this hour, what are the positional groups that you think are the biggest decisions for the Chiefs? Like the biggest unknowns right now? Is it all D-line and like running back / wide receiver, or is it, D-line and cornerback? I think D-line is number one, but
yeah, I think it has to be.
After that, I do wonder like how many other spots are like, all right, this is going to be a difficult decision where the Chiefs are going to go back and forth at figuring out who's going to get this final spot in this positional group.
I do think that little conversation around like what I'm calling the flex spot of running back, receiver, tight end.
Nobody cares about fantasy.
I listen, people care. But like that, those are three spots where the expected number has changed during training camp, right? I guess running back, at least the names have changed. Tight end, the number of expectations has changed, and the receiving number at some point you had to say, okay, 7's really happening. That, for the reasons we've discussed, I think is interesting. Defensive line is the one that scares me.
Yeah.
I look at the defensive line, and in Matt Derrick's post preseason rosterology here,
he's got his out. Nick Jacobs has one out as well. I'll get your name right, Nick, eventually.
We'll get there.
I just met
point.
you over the weekend.
Yeah, it's finally nice you guys finally had a chance to cross paths.
It's great.
Here's what Matt has: Karlaftis, Wharton, Noddy, Dana, Felix Uzama, Shelton, Herring, Coburn, Thompson, Kane-Doe. Roster exemption, Chris Jones. Suspended list, Charles Omenihu.
So is that 9 defensive linemen?
That's 10 defensive linemen, keeping all of Shelton, Herring, Thompson, and Kane-Doe. And at least when you weren't thinking about Omenihu getting suspended at all, those guys were all on the bubble. Shelton played his way into that spot. Tershawn Wharton has been on again, off again, just kind of working back from his knee. Derek Noddy, we've talked about, is just last year, the last couple of years have been steps in the wrong direction. Maybe he's healthier now, and that would be great. But even if you were just expecting Omenihu to miss 4 games, even accepting 6 now, that group is missing not just Chris Jones. I mean, that group is missing 2 starters, and then you have 2 depth pieces, maybe 3 depth pieces elevated into starting roles. That group gets shallow quick.
I mean, how many 3 techniques do the Chiefs have on the roster that aren't named Chris Jones and Turk Wharton?
I think 0.
That's the thing. So if Chris Jones goes on your did not report list, and you've got the roster exemption, so you can have another player at that spot, and Chris Jones does not count against your 53. So that opens up a spot for defensive tackle. Then are you just keeping an extra run-stopping defensive tackle and just being redundant there?
I haven't gotten to look at specifically where Danny Shelton was lined up through the preseason because he has lost some weight and has moved around a little more.
I can't imagine him being a Turk Wharton or Chris Jones guy.
Well, not effectively, no. But in terms of who's gonna be there in the lineup, I mean, because I also don't think Daniel Wise is going to do it effectively, but he could be that guy too.
I feel like that's the Royals. I don't know that he's going to be a third pitcher. I don't think he can be a third man on the rotation. Well, not effectively, but he can be the third guy up in the season.
If you're literally just talking about the names that are on this list, I think that he's probably next. And really, maybe it's Mike Dana. And now you're starting your pass rush defensive line could be Karlaftis, Felix, Dana, Wharton.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Nick. How is that twice now? Is this retractable?
The retractable Nick Jacobs. What did he say?
Nick Jacobs. Nick, I promise. I'm going to get your name right eventually. He has 9 defensive linemen. Just the difference is he does not have Kane-Doe making the squad. But he also has Chris Jones on the did not report and has Omenihu on the 6-game suspension, which is everybody that is smart would have that. The 6-game suspension, of course. But he's got 9, including with Chris Jones on the did not report. So sort of feels like he's going with, and I'm going to put words in Nick Jacobs' mouth, I feel like maybe he's going with the defensive line if Chris Jones were a part of it, and then just eliminating Chris Jones from that, and maybe there's a spot somewhere else that he's adding to that Chris Jones would have taken if he would have been there all along.
Who did that?
Nick Jacobs.
Sports Radio 810 is proud to be Kansas City's home for the National Football League.
65-yard punt return.
Mealtime. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
Nine 912-4810 is the text line. Text says, Ross is getting Jody's goal line snaps. Jump ball outside is real. Hey, he had that in the game on Saturday.
Made that comp on the postgame show a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Text says, do you think the CJ deal would be done already if he didn't hold out? I wonder if when Jones didn't show up, the Chiefs stopped communication because they didn't want to set the precedent that players can do that to them. I don't know.
I don't think so.
I mean, I would guess not. I would guess that it would just simply be no communication between his agents and Brett Veach. But it would be there would be communication between Brett Veach and Chris Jones in the, hey, how you doing? How you feeling, man? How you feeling? Hey, all good, man. You feeling good? Getting ready for the season? Absolutely. I love you. Love you. Big 9-5. All right, whatever. Like, they could go down and say hi and talk, as opposed to, I would assume there's none of that going on.
Yeah.
I do wonder if the Katz brothers were concerned that if Chris Jones shows up, then he starts to get antsy and just says, let's sign the deal. Let's just get it done. I'm around these guys now, and I don't want to be anywhere else. As long as it's out of sight, out of mind, I can sort of stand my ground and hold out for what I demand, and the heartstrings aren't tugging at me that it's time to go play football right now. Go ahead and sign the deal. That, don't go to camp. We've got the leverage here. I think they've lost the leverage right now.
I do think that's part of it, though. I think it's that. Let's not get everybody too buddy, but to the texter's original question,
yeah,
I don't think at any point the Chiefs have said, well, no, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't, we're not doing such negotiation here. I just think that this is the vibes would be better if he would have been at camp for the thing you just talked about, the sort of little meetings that aren't meetings and everything. You'd feel a lot better about the relationship as a whole.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, the relationship.
But I do not think the contract would be more done right now, because I think whatever Chris Jones' side's asking for, however much the Chiefs have moved, however much Jones' side has moved, there's still space there. And I don't think that's just they haven't talked enough. I think there's a real fundamental disagreement somewhere in there.
And I do wonder if there's even an acknowledgement of the possibility from the Katz brothers or Chris Jones' side that after this year, as I brought up with Matt Verderam, I mean, what if Quinnen Williams goes out there and has his career year and has 15, 16 sacks, and Aaron Donald returns to Aaron Donald form and looks like the Aaron Donald of 3 years ago and is in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, and Chris Jones is having a good season, having what would be a typical Chris Jones season, just not a career year Chris Jones season, where I know the sacks, you can look at 2018, what he had there with the counting numbers. You had Justin Houston and you had D Ford on the outside. And it was one of those to where I think part of the reason the Chiefs did not give Chris Jones a new contract before the 2019 season was the Chiefs wanted to see if Chris Jones would do it without two defensive ends that are collapsing the pocket and forcing the quarterback to step up, which then was right into Chris Jones' hands. Turns out he's pretty freaking good, even without those guys. And then he got the big contract. After they franchised him, he got the, $60, $80 million deal, whatever it was at the time. And now the money that they, want to pay Chris Jones is between Quinnen Williams and Aaron Donald. But I do wonder if the Katz brothers have ever acknowledged and thought of the possibility that if Quinnen Williams comes out and just has a unbelievable career year, and Chris Jones has a typical Chris Jones year, and Aaron Donald returns to having a Aaron Donald typical year, even on the open market, does Chris Jones get that much more than what Quinnen Williams is getting?
Well, and this is like yet another pebble onto this pile of rocks from what you guys were talking about there in that vein. It's not even it's even harder for Chris Jones than just merely all of that, which is still already a lot. Again, it's another rock on the pile. But you got to talk about the eye test, the counting stats, and the rest of the league. Like, those are kind of three areas we've covered here, right? If Chris Jones has as good a season, but the counting stats are worse, it's going to be harder for him to get paid, at least to the extent he wants to get paid right now. If he goes out there and the counting stats are there, but he looks like he has maybe taken a step back with another year of age, or like there's any percentage of wear down, his value is going to drop. If the rest of the league has other guys that jump him in the pecking order in terms of defensive tackles, it's going to make it harder for him to get paid. But it's not even just that. I mean, and you guys touched on this, but Chris Jones, if he has the exact same season that he had last year, copy and paste the exact same dominant year, third in defensive player of the year voting and all of that, he is still going to take a small step backward in value by the way the Chiefs and the rest of the league will evaluate him because of age. Years of consistency can increase your value. If Chris Jones would have at age, 25 and 26 had these two perfect years back to back, then maybe his math changes a little bit. But at this point, even if it means, wait, hold on, I've had 2 Aaron Donald levels of production in 2 years in a row. My value should still be going up with that. I would understand why that'd be frustrating. I'd understand why Chris Jones is frustrated now. But it's not how it's actually going to pan out, because the years the Chiefs are worried about paying, the Chiefs aren't worried about paying Chris Jones this year or next year. I don't think they're even really worried about paying him in 2025. They're worried about paying him the back deals of this contract. The guaranteed discussion that's happening for what 25, 26, 27 looks like. Not his age, the year.
Yeah.
His age, 30 seasons, not a problem. I don't think they're worried about his age 31 season. What do you look like when you're 32 and 33? And is that a number we can get out of with some dead money, or does that have to be fully guaranteed? That number, his age, will just tick on as time goes forward, because time comes for us all. And that is never a thing that Chris Jones is going to be able to leverage out of the conversation at this point. It's unfortunate, I guess, but he's had a stupendous season, and Aaron Donald has been older and paid more, but that was after a career of being legitimately in the conversation, strongly in the conversation for the greatest NFL player ever, period. Defensive player, pass rusher, interior guy, player, period. Aaron Donald's been in that case for a long time. Chris Jones has merely been on a future Hall of Fame track, which is still worth a lot of money.
So if you look at, let's say, Le'Veon Bell, that Chris Jones brought up before. Now, Le'Veon Bell sat out an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
He had on the table 4 years, $52.5 million, which is roughly $13 million a year. $13 a year, I can understand why he wanted
that.
to sit out.
I think you hold out a little
yes,
bit.
Yes, $13 million per year and almost $30 million guaranteed. That's what Le'Veon Bell was being. That's what he got from the Jets. Le'Veon Bell was being offered 5 years, $70 million, which was $14 million per year, and it was going to be about $40 million that was going to be guaranteed in that contract. Okay. So here's how the money would have stacked up for Le'Veon Bell, sitting out and not sitting out. Mm-hmm. If he signs that contract with the Jets, this is money earned year by year. In 2018, he would have made $21 million. 2019, he would have made 33. This is now adding up. Sure. So he would have made $33 million.
33, yeah.
2020, he would have made a total of $45 million in those 3 years. 2018, 19, and 20, he would have made $45 million if he did not sit out. Instead, 2018, he made nothing. Mm-hmm. 2019, he made $14.9 million franchise. 2020, then adding on the 14, he made a total of $28 million. And in 2021, he made a total of $180,000. So from 2019 to 20 to 21, he made $28 million over 4 years instead of $45 million over 3. $17 million Le'Veon Bell cost himself by not signing that contract with the Steelers and sitting out all year.
Yep.
$17 million.
And it's different being a running back.
You think it was worth it?
But I don't think it was worth it. I think he would do that differently.
Because anybody that wants to throw out the name and say, well, you know what, Le'Veon Bell did it. Yeah. And that was stupid.
Yeah.
That was dumb. He lost money that he'll never get back. He lost almost $20 million by sitting out because he wanted more than the $40 million guaranteed. He ended up with getting a total the rest of his career of $28 million. So even if you talk about guaranteed versus what the contract would be versus, what he actually got, even at minimum, he lost $12 million because he was going to get 40 guaranteed and he got a total of 28 the rest of his career. And he ended up going to the Jets and then bounced around, all that different stuff. Instead of playing with the Steelers where you had played, where you were beloved, where you had chances of going to the playoffs and things like that. You turn that down to then go to the Jets, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bucks over the next 3 years.
I know this is a perhaps beleaguered point from me time over time, every time we have contract discussions like this and everything. There is a way to be responsible when we talk about stuff like this, which is that I am very understanding of an NFL player who has historically outperformed his value, overproduced for his employer, and has a very clear expiration date on his career. NFL players don't get to do their jobs until their 40s, 50s, and 60s, except for Tom Brady, who did get to do it into his early 70s, and we're all very happy for him. But you don't get to do it until actual retirement ages.
I thought it was odd he played with his grandson.
What a cool story. Awesome. Kissed him on the mouth, which I did think was strange, but
after throwing a touchdown to him.
But I mean, what an incredible moment. I mean, if you think about it, it really was a cool moment.
That's how it is in their family.
But like I understand that these guys have, again, short careers, and when you achieve at the highest levels of greatness, you would like to be paid like you have achieved the highest levels of greatness. I understand that, while also understanding that if you're Brett Veach right now, you can say with a straight face and full honesty, hey, Chris Jones, I don't know if we have 2 Lombardi trophies without you. I certainly don't think we have both of them, and we might not have either of them. You've been great. We've paid you well. It's different than it being on your rookie deal, too. This isn't Chris Jones' first deal, so maybe I have just a smidge less of that sort of like all-out player empowerment sort of leanings that I typically have, because he's gotten paid in a big way once, and he was playing great football while making $20 million. That, no one here was exploited like is often the case on rookie contracts, right? So we can be reasonable about, I understand why you gotta fight for every dollar here, because this is the last time Chris Jones is going to sign the deal of this magnitude. But I also understand if you're Brett Veach, you can say, hey, look, like we drafted you and developed you and ultimately paid you for all of that work, paid you fairly, we think. Now we're going to pay you fairly again for the years to come. We just have to make sure that this football team continues to be a good football team altogether. This is what we think the market shows your value is. So sorry it's business. Sorry it's not personal. Sorry it's whatever. But you would just like to think that in what seems, we don't know this, but what seems like a healthy relationship between the Chiefs and Chris Jones over the years. Right now it does not seem healthy. But in what seems like it has been a healthy relationship over the course of a long time of these two sides working together, a long time of Chris Jones being in the organization, all of that, you would like to think there's a place for both sides to be a little bit pained and a little bit reasonable and to say, all right, Chris Jones says I could get a little more guaranteed money if I was on the open market right now, but I'm not, and so I'm here. Here we go. The Chiefs could say, hey, we really think we probably could have tried to drag this out until the last moment and get you down a few $1 million, but we're going to go ahead and find that middle ground. The fact that that has not been found between those two sides is really disappointing, just because it to me, it becomes indicative of a relationship that has been very fruitful for a lot of years, looking pretty toxic at the moment.
Do you think there's anything to Ryan Poles reaching out to the Chiefs and inquiring the report of Ryan Poles reaching out to the Chiefs, inquiring about Chris Jones, other than, hey, Brett, hope your weekend's going well. Look, man, due diligence.
We got some cap space.
What's the deal with we got some draft picks. We got an extra from Carolina. If the draft order were set the same as it was last year, our draft picks would be the number 10, the number 12, and number 44 in the 2024 draft. That's if Carolina ends up with the number 10 pick again. They got a quarterback. They, sold off some other pieces to get that quarterback. Maybe they're even higher. We might suck. Maybe we got 2 top 10 picks next year, and that means that number 44 pick would even be higher if we're drafting higher than 12th. Hey, just kicking the tires.
Hey, we also passed on Jalen Carter when we could have had him number 1 overall. So let's spend more money and more picks.
That's right. So let's do that. What do you think? You good with it? All right.
I think my takeaway there is that Ryan Poles is doing his job. Yes. I think that's at least the biggest one.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're Brett Veach and Ryan Poles calls, it's your job to answer regardless. And we don't have anything, at least nothing that I've seen, in terms of like how far those conversations went or a price being given to the Bears.
Yeah, there's not a Jonathan Taylor where 6 teams have inquired and 2 teams have made serious offers.
Right. And so we're not in that space. It's still, to me, the big hurdle is the fact that trading Chris Jones right now would undeniably and demonstrably hurt you in 2023. As bad as almost anything could hurt your team, unless you're able to make that swap with a team that has a player in return that you think is going to bring any amount of respite from losing Chris Jones. Just a 3-tech who is a starting caliber 3-tech. Still a tremendous downgrade from the best interior defensive lineman in football, but someone who could be there for 17 games and play decent ball. But I would be a little bit surprised if the Chiefs weren't taking all those phone calls throughout this process. Here's the other reason. Here's another part. If you are Brett Veach, and the Katz brothers finally show back up in town again, and you guys get a big pile of burn-ins, throw them in the middle of the table, and then knock some stuff out, right? If they come to town and Brett Veach says, "Hey guys, we'll keep working on this, still get this long-term deal done." We did get a really interesting phone call from the Chicago Bears, and just want to kind of gauge Chris's interest on, he'd be down to sign this deal. We kind of gave them the lowdown. They know what the range of prices would be, and the Bears we think would get pretty close. So that's something you guys would be willing to explore. That's what we're looking at right now. If Chris Jones has the Katz brothers tell him, "Hey Chris, good news. We've got your extra $10 million guaranteed, $20 million guaranteed, whatever the gap is. We got it. We found it for you. And now your quarterback is Justin Fields." I think that's a leverage win for the Chiefs. I really do. Even if it's not a trade they want to make, not a trade that they want to take. If everybody, and again, I'm projecting and I'm guessing on some things, so this is me gas-bagging even more than usual. But if the negotiations feels like they maybe have left good faith territory, if it's like, all right, man, we're all bleeping each other the whole time, and we're just bleeping 24/7. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. Okay, fine. Now let's throw everything out there and let's just get silly with it. Then the Chiefs can play silly ball also. But if you're on Chris Jones's team right now and you're saying, hey, not the football team, the Cats team,
the Cats teams.
If you're over there and you're starting to hear, all right, so I'm going to have to explain to Chris Jones that the Bears are the place to be next, huh? He's going to be playing Soldier Field now for the remainder of his career. I don't know that makes anybody happier for what they're actually working towards.
I'm looking through, and the only one would be Andrew Billings, who's on the Chicago Bears, who was on the Bengals for 4 years and then played with the Raiders last year, and is now on the Bears as a free agent. But it's a minimal contract. But he's a guy that, offers some pass rush, 3 technique, 5 technique, can do some of that. But that's just a player thrown back, as in like, hey, you want some depth? We're gonna take a first and a second. We're gonna take that Carolina first because we think Carolina's gonna be worse than you, and your second rounder. So right now it'd be pick 44. Hopefully you suck as well, and it's a little bit higher. We're gonna take that and that second rounder, and then Billings, who's a defensive tackle, and bring him over, and that at least helps this year. And then, boy, now we got 2 first-rounders next year, 2 second-rounders, and we continue to keep that window wide open and replenish and all of that stuff, even though you're losing the, what was this last year, the best defensive tackle in all of football, a premier position. And, what Buckner went for the number 14 overall pick, number 14 or 16 from the 49ers to the Colts.
That was
a
right
number of
around
years
there,
ago,
yeah.
like before the 2020 NFL draft. So it's a few years ago. Chris Jones is better. Clearly is better. And I think there should be more value put on the game record at that position than really there was. And that was a big surprise of the offseason, probably a big surprise for the Katz brothers, that those defensive linemen got what they got. And it wasn't – we thought at the point it was great news for the Chiefs that those defensive linemen got that, because then it's like, okay, you're going to have to pay Chris Jones. You don't have to pay him as much now. Instead, it feels like it could be the hurdle of, no, Chris Jones wants this much money because, he's that much better than these particular players. And the Chiefs are going, yeah, but here's the market, though. This is now the market. Yeah, but look at Aaron Donald. Yeah, that is so far outside of the market it can't even see the market. It's not allowed in the market. The market is closed for that contract, okay? It's not the market. We're not going to pay you based on the anomaly, the crazy number over here. We're going to pay you based on what the market is. And the market says these great defensive tackles in the NFL right now are making $24-25 million per year, and whatever the guaranteed dollars are, because that's probably more what it's going to come down to than anything else. I think it's Ryan Poles doing his job.
Yep.
Reaching out. What do you think? And then I think there's also, from the Brett Veach standpoint of, like you said, you contact the Katz brothers and say, hey, gauging interest for you. Is this something that you think is in the future? How serious is Chris Jones of playing the next 2, 3, 4 years here in Kansas City? He said he wanted to stay as a Chief. How serious is he? Because we need to know, because we're building our team for this year and the years in the future. Chris Jones is worried about what he's getting right now. We can't think that way. Where's his interest level?
I'm gonna indulge the Bears trade path a little further also, just since we're here, and this is not a spot I ever really thought we'd be in. For DeForest Buckner, that was the 13th overall pick is what it ended up being, but that was before Buckner's age 26 season. Just again, another point of reference on how big of a deal age is going to be, especially when you know how long you're going to have to extend the guy.
And they also signed him to a big contract as well.
Which would have to be the case with Chris Jones also.
Absolutely.
But you're signing him through a later stretch of his career. If you start giving some of the specific spots, some of the specific picks that the Bears have, and how bad they or the Panthers could be, and it starts feeling a little more real. Like there's just you can start visualizing a little more. Again, I think that it would have to probably be a pair of moves. And I'm gonna go ahead. Here's my blank at the front end. I don't think this is what happens. I think Chris Jones plays for the Chiefs in 2023. I think that is still by far the most likely thing.
Agreed.
Does he play for the Chiefs in 2024? I'm not sure. I think that is maybe the slightly more likely thing. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what I even believe on if a deal gets done.
50.1.
I'm feeling like 50.1. But he'll be a Chief this year, most likely. But the way that you do like snipe a little bit of draft value as a good team, the Niners trading DeForest Buckner is a great example of this. But a way you can really do it is by those trades that you do the year before, where it's a future first, like is what's going to be happening for the Bears, thanks to the Panthers and every team who got picks for Trey Lance or some of the other big swings and misses that have not worked out so well. If the Chiefs were to say, "All right, we're moving Chris Jones. This sucks. Here's the breakdown. Here's what's happening here. Whatever," and they get a 2024 first-round pick from the Chicago Bears, either their own or the Panthers, you are talking about a team that has a legitimate likelihood of a top 10 overall draft pick. And the Chiefs, it's how the Eagles do this all the bleeping time, obviously. You end up with your Jalen Carter draft eligibility there because you have laid out these steps in advance. I think it would have to be a pair of moves, because I think it would have to be getting the most you can for Chris Jones and then using some of that to go get yourself some help on the interior right now. I don't know if that's finding a defensive tackle who's about to get cut, if that's finding a veteran who you just want to give a new start to, who you think could be a starter day one, whatever. You can't trade Chris Jones and then go into this season with this exact depth chart plus draft picks. But maybe that does get you a little bit closer to a stopgap filler now, and that idea of the pick. There's a better likelihood it's a top 10 pick and a trade you make a year earlier than the trade you could make the year of the draft, because once you know it's a top 10 pick, teams are a little less excited to give it up. If you're the Panthers or the Texans trading a future first so you can get your quarterback and your defensive end, you're giving the Cardinals a chance to look really smart this time next year. That is, I guess, the way you can talk yourself into some Chris Jones stuff. It just would be also really horrible for their Super Bowl chances this season.
For the Bears, though, as they are filled with draft picks for next year, there's more excitement around Chicago. Is Justin Fields real? They've got Edmonds. They went and traded for DJ Moore. as part of that, trade with Carolina. So you got a wide receiver to go along with Mooney.
Chase
and
Claypool's, I guess, your number 2 or 3. That
he'd
trade
be your
doesn't look
number
very
3.
good.
He'd be your number 3
Yeah.
because of Mooney being number 2. Khalil Herbert's a
They
fine.
traded the 33rd overall pick for Claypool, right? Wasn't it the first pick of the second round?
Something like that,
Whew.
yeah.
That turned into Joey Porter Jr., actually.
Oh,
That's
you're
interesting.
right.
Yeah, that's interesting. See,
Oof.
that's why we rely on Dylan.
It's also why we don't trade draft picks if we add an advance if you can
That's
help
right.
it.
But the Bears have almost $100 million projected under the cap next year, so they could clearly fit Chris Jones. And if they think they're going to take a step forward this year with Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles, and they've got draft capital and a lot of money to spend, and they've already added some pieces, do they say, you know what, it's worth it to go get Chris Jones because we feel like 2024 and 2025 are the years with Justin Fields still under rookie contract that we're ready to really compete. And we add that guy to our defense with one of the best linebackers and some other pieces that we can add along the way with the money we have to spend and the draft picks we have and the draft picks we had this year. This is our go time. Let's do this. If you're Ryan Poles and Eberflus, it would make sense from that perspective.
100%.
Does it then make sense from the Chiefs' perspective? I don't know. But these are the things the Chiefs have to start examining. If Ryan Poles is calling, I'm listening.
Yep, you have to. You again, having your options, having your leverage is never going to be a bad thing in a situation like this. And you're right. My knee-jerk reaction was, it feels a little early for the Bears, doesn't it? And then you spend an extra second marinating on that. It feels a little early because I'm a little skeptical about the Bears.
I am too.
It's not early from a build out your team standpoint. Like you said, you're deciding that you're really making a swing with Justin Fields. You have another rookie contract little window that is still tacked on here. And if the Bears, if in our eyes we're saying we're a little skeptical of the Bears, we think they're a little further behind in that process than they might think they are. Well, a nice way to speed that up would be to have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in the middle of your defense. Now, all of a sudden, that defense has some expectations put on it again in terms of being able to take some more steps. You have a legit monster in the middle there that the Bears haven't had since they had Khalil Mack, certainly. And now you have that across from Justin Fields. Hey, you don't have to do all of this all at once as the offense comes together. That they drafted 3 defensive linemen this year's draft class, by the way. 2 of those were day 1, day 2 picks. Excuse me, 2 of those were day 2 picks. Second and third rounder also. I mean, if the Bears are like, yeah, we're hitting the turbo button this year, it makes a ton of sense. It really does.
What it would be saying, though, and this is where like a big part of this season in Chicago is what's Justin Fields.
Yep.
You got DJ Moore, you got Mooney, you got some other pieces. Justin Fields, what do you have in him? Is he going to take that Jalen Hurts step and be that type of player? Or this time next year, you're dealing with quarterback questions and what's going to happen and who are you going to go? Because if you traded one of your first rounders, or let's say you trade the Carolina pick and your second rounder, number 44, for Chris Jones, you're essentially saying Justin Fields is our guy.
Yep.
Because it's no longer hey, let's put people around him, see what we have in Justin Fields right now, because next year, now we've got 3 picks in the top 44. We can really be some movers in the draft up and down, whatever we need to do. And if Justin Fields falls on his face this year, we can go and get somebody. Maybe not Caleb Williams, but depending on if somebody is the number 1 pick that has a quarterback already. Now we can throw 10 and whatever we are, because if Justin Fields falls on his face, now all of a sudden their pick looks a little bit better. And the Carolina pick and our second rounder, we can go up and get Caleb Williams. If we trade for Chris Jones, that's gone. Justin Fields is our guy. He is our guy. He's our quarterback, and we totally believe in him. Those are the questions they have to be making or asking themselves and deciding if they're going to make any move whatsoever for a premier player that's going to cost you premier compensation.
And like you said, that was essentially the plan for the Eagles coming into this last season. It was
That's
either Jalen Hurts is going to look like an MVP candidate, or we're going to have the draft capital to figure out who our quarterback is next year. They might not have been able to get to Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, but they could have gotten to Anthony Richardson, or they could have they could have had Will Levis like 3 times anyway. But instead the Eagles just kick their feet up and say, I guess we'll take Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
Bleep him.
So what I hear from Josh is that the Bears will be playing for the Super Bowl this year. That's the only thing to take away from what you just said.
And the Chiefs will draft 2 defensive players out of Georgia in the first round next year. I think that's what's happening.
No, because the Chiefs are beating the Bears in the Super Bowl this year.
Oh, I thought they were having to lose to the Bears in the Super Bowl for that logic to work.
No, because the Eagles lost in the Super Bowl in the year that they were like, oh, what are we going to do? I just want them to get
Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith the sequels next year. So I would support getting to that end. I'd rather them win the Super Bowl, though.
Most of the time, the sequels suck, though.
Well, I hope that's not true for Run It Back 2.
Are you...
This is the second Run It Back sequel.
Are we getting Godfather 2 and Top Gun Maverick? I'm in.
That would be nice.
That's the sequel.
That would be very nice.
Learn Funny is Best next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WH.
I will continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson, Josh Brisco, Dylan Michaels. We had up until 2 o'clock. We got a little Learn Funniest Best coming your way. Learn Funniest Best, going around the room what we learned this weekend, the funniest from the weekend, the best from the weekend as well. All of that we get into here. No Mick Schaefer today to give us his Learn Funniest Best, but even
Finally
with
do it on time.
even in his absence, it is still presented by Pyramid Roofing for a free estimate. I think I'm going to talk gooder tomorrow.
I had a rough one on Saturday. Little final preseason post game of the
kidding.
year.
Yeah.
Boy, it's like I had pudding in my mouth for 2.5 hours.
I had a long weekend. There was a lot of stuff. Long weekend is not it's the opposite of a busy weekend.
Yeah,
it's
you had a short weekend.
Had a short weekend, a busy weekend, but it felt longer because there were so many things we had to do and all of that stuff. Friday night to last night to today, I'm like, man, I guess I just did not get a chance to rest and stop talking.
Yeah.
Typically, I do that between 10 and 2.
There's a difference between resting and stopping talking. The fact that you've got an incredible autopilot at this point should not be held against you.
That's true. That's true. It is presented by Pyramid Roofing. For a free estimate, give them a call, 816-966-1101 or pyramidroofingkc.com. Learned funniest and the best from the weekend. Here's what I learned.
What'd you learn?
I learned, and this is so great because we were just talking about the Bears and Tremaine Edmonds on the defense for the Bears. What I learned is that Rams rookie quarterback Stetson Bennett is 186 days older than Tremaine Edmonds, who is entering his 6th season in the NFL.
Immaculate.
That Stetson Bennett is essentially 6 months older than a man entering his 6th season and his 2nd team.
5-year veteran.
And who, by the way, is going on his 2nd team, or is already on his 2nd team, with a new contract, a second contract. It's not like he just got Kadarius Toney on his 2nd team in the NFL. Well, that's different. He's still entering year 3 of his NFL career. Tremaine Edmonds is entering year 6. Stetson Bennett, 6 months older.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Also learned that Bob Barker died this weekend, so that sucks. What was your learn there, Josh?
So, Jason, what I learned this weekend is that Bob Barker had a plan all along.
What was the plan?
I frequently
tell me the plan.
I frequently mentioned on this show and just in real life. Did you know that Bob Barker's still alive?
That is true. Yeah,
Well,
you do that a lot.
He's not anymore, and so I'll have to stop doing that and get out of that habit. As he passed away at age 99. Here's the plan, though. Here's what I learned, as noted by a few tweets after his passing. Bob Barker went as far as he could go without going over $1. Bob Barker got to 99, and he said, I'm out. I did it. I got 99 cents out of this life. I bet he got a lot more out of it than that.
Yeah, I bet he did get a lot more.
He went as far as he could go without going over $1.
He was good. Then did he make it to the Showcase Showdown in the sky?
I think he did. I think he is currently absolutely enjoying some spayed and neutered pets at the big Showcase Showdown in the sky.
I hope he gets a really nice washer and dryer set.
I think he's got to get the best.
And a great trip to Curacao.
All-inclusive
vacation
Barbados.
for 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, something just beautiful. Throwing in a brand new vacuum.
And a new chariot!
And a chariot. And gates that are golden.
Or, I mean, we have to
a golden ticket admission.
We have to just consider this. Maybe Bob Barker's in hell.
What?
We don't know. I don't know Bob Barker. We have to consider that maybe that's an option. And if he is, I think then he is just playing the Price is Right for all of eternity, just never making it to the showdown. That maybe spinning the wheel and it just ticks over. I mean, like, imagine the little yodeler goes over the edge. I feel like that would be Bob Barker's hell.
You spin it, and whatever your first number is, the only numbers left on the spin again are above $1.
It always adds up to like
40
101.
Cents. All the 61 cents or more, no matter what.
That's not even supposed to be on there.
How is there a 101? How is there a $1 on this wheel? That's not even right. I kind of make up the rules down here.
Yeah, it's just it's a little bit different.
Sorry, guy.
The price is wrong.
Yeah, maybe you should have been nicer to some people.
What do you
prices.
expect?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't even want to imagine that. This guy is in the Showcase Showdown in the Sky.
I bet you're right.
That's what he's doing. Dylan, what did you learn?
So I learned
Now when Drew
that
Carey dies.
I learned that the United States is not the world.
Oh.
So today, a man named Noah Lyles on the United States track team had this to say in regarding the NBA Finals and how their hats are. So take a listen here.
You know, the thing that hurts me the most is that I have to watch the NBA Finals and they have world champion on their head. World champion of what? The United States? Don't get me wrong. I love the U.S. at times. But that ain't the world. That is not the world. We are the world.
So he is another person to have the worst take in the world. Usually this is
In the
saved
world.
for an uncle or a family member who doesn't watch sports and asks this question at holidays. But Noah Lyles has joined the conversation of saying that for some reason the best players don't play in the United States, so it can't be the world championship. So the Chiefs are not world champion footballers. It's the whole thing. So
Also,
I learned that.
they play teams that are outside of the United States. Maybe if you just said North America.
A meager defense. It's a great line delivery there. There's a real Stephen A. Smith characteristic there of a now don't get me wrong. I love the United States. It's like whoa, hold on, wait a second, what? Some real Stephen A. line
The
delivery.
fact that they call themselves world champions is preposterous.
World champions of what?
Telling me they're
No.
somewhere in Uzbekistan that can't beat the Lakers. I mean, please.
And look, I do think Nikola Jokic, we've often discussed, the greatest American basketball player of all time.
Yes.
Clearly.
Right. But I think, I guess we don't really have to debate this, but I think the point is that these are the best basketball players in the world.
Yeah.
And if you are good enough to play, you then come to the NBA, and the NBA team would beat any other basketball team from any other country in a best of 7, just as I personally believe the Chiefs would beat any other football team constructed out there, any team that won the Canadian Football League or the Australian Football League or any rugby team that you want to turn into a football, whatever it might be. Any team that calls themselves football team, the Chiefs would beat in football.
Yes, and this is what people would call the common sense side of the debate that you have found. So
Okay.
I agree.
Like I said, we probably don't even need to mention it. But I talk for 4 hours a day, so
I
figured I would mention it there. What was your funniest from the weekend, Josh?
Well, this one, it has a sad sort of tint to it, but it still was
I'm
very
hoping it's
funny.
not Bob Barker.
It's not Bob Barker,
Okay.
but the Pro Football Hall of Fame tweeted something out over the weekend that got a lot of traction. I think
didn't see it.
understandably so. You didn't see it?
No.
Well, it's are you familiar with Boltman, the Los Angeles Chargers super fan who looks like if Bible Man got electrocuted and I'll just show you. You're going to see a little picture here from the side. He's got the big foam electric lightning bolt.
Oh, I know who you're talking about now. Yeah.
The face it looks sort of like Woo Shock, the Shockers mascot, but if it was a lightning bolt.
Yeah, I'll take your word
Well,
for
the
it.
actual picture here is Boltman staring at some bronze busts on the wall, and the Pro Football Hall of Fame tweeted out, "This weekend, Boltman visited the Pro Football Hall of Fame. This included a moment for solemn reflection in front of the bronze bust of the late Junior Seau." They later edited that tweet to say, "This included a moment to pay his respects in front of the bronze bust of the late Junior Seau." I personally didn't have a problem with the phrasing. The thing I had a problem with is that it is incredibly difficult for me to directly juxtapose an all-time football player and a tragic, shortening of his life, cut short, and this man who dressed up like a Los Angeles Chargers superhero to show up in Canton and pay his respects in full, absolute, head-to-toe costume. It's the same Boltman who got a little shine from the San Diego City Council meetings in 2015 when he showed up to talk about stadium projects. You get another view of his sunglasses on, face carved, lightning bolt head. A lot of replies also adding to the funny tension of all gave some, Boltman gave all. Some other moments of Boltman photoshopped into other moments throughout history where he could pay his respects.
What if last year at this time, the Pro Football Hall of Fame put out a tweet that said, this weekend, Chiefsaholic visited the Pro Football Hall of Fame and stopped and included a moment to pay his respects to the late Len Dawson. Because he was still walking free at this time last year.
He was walking free at this time last year. Who would have known?
I mean, do we know that Boltman is not out there robbing banks or doing other things that it might look back and go, well, maybe celebrating a fan because he wears a costume at games, maybe not the smartest thing to do. I don't know.
I don't believe anything about any super fans whose faces I can't see. At this point, you're all under suspicion.
I'd rather celebrate the dude that sits in the front row behind the end zone with the Chiefs jacket and is always like crazy yelling and everything. I'd rather celebrate that dude. Okay, that guy.
Like he has like an ID that like shows his identity, and he's not like on the lam.
Face. Yeah, it's actually his face. He's there. He just wears a cool, Chiefs like sport coat.
I support that.
And he's in the same spot at every game, and the TV finds him.
Yeah, fantastic.
You know? And there was the GIF that went out last year when the Chiefs played the Raiders, and Chris Jones landed on Carr with the football, and then he lost his mind. I'd rather have that than Boltman. What was the funniest for you, Dylan?
The funniest for me, week 0 of college football was
the
last
funniest?
week. Well, a lot of things, but the funniest of all was Vanderbilt's scoreboard. I don't know if you saw this.
I didn't.
They had inclement weather for their Hawaii game, and they're still mid-construction of their new stadium. So they have 2, it looks like cranes, holding each side of their new Daktronics scoreboard, and there's nothing else suspending it, and the wind started to do a number on it during the temporary stoppage of the game, so they had to actually lower it on the crane to a lower spot. So if you see that on Twitter, it's basically just a lone video board with speakers swaying back and forth like a swing set.
That is great.
Because the SEC, it matters more.
It just matters more. It does. It just matters more. I thought, week 0, that was my favorite. My funniest from the weekend was week 0, San Diego State's quarterback hitting the referee in the face with a football.
Oh! Fantastic.
Yes.
The quarterback of the team that I don't know who it is off the top of my head, who had the face mask penalty, and the guy, grabbed his face mask, turned it completely around, and he was running to the right, not being able to see, with the face mask in the back of his head, staring into the back of his helmet, trying to get his helmet off, and then he just throws the football because he can't see where he's running.
Brilliant.
Or it could be Formula One, where the Ferrari Red Bull team came in for a pit stop. They jacked up the car, and they're waiting, and then all of a sudden this guy jumps over the wall with a tire and then looks around. There's nobody else behind him. And then they just send the Ferrari off, the Red Bull team off. Just stopped in for tires, and the tire guys just weren't there, ready to go.
One guy came over with a wheel?
One guy jumped the wall.
So they weren't even too tired. Like, there's no excuse for that. Boy, if you could have seen the expression that Jason's face went from just happy smile to hearing that joke and straight on to, I can't believe you did this.
Also, my funniest is Nick Saban announcing today that he will no longer be releasing depth charts because it has become a distraction for his team after winning 7 national championships by releasing depth charts. Now, depth charts, a distraction. No more depth charts. Best from the weekend, Dylan.
The best from the weekend for me was the Notre Dame quarterback, Sam Hartman. He had to have his rib removed for, I think, Josh, we got Paget Schroeder syndrome. It's blood
Something
clots.
like that. Blood clot stuff, yeah.
Right around that area, which requires a rib to be removed.
Yeah.
And he made it into a necklace that almost looks like one of those shark tooth necklaces and wore it during the game.
Yeah, my favorite is his 3 or more touchdown line at DraftKings. That was my favorite in that Notre Dame minus the points and him getting 3 or more touchdowns. I certainly appreciated that. That's my best from the weekend, too. No, my best from the weekend is my son can apparently be Jordan Lyles. First ever kid pitch game over the weekend. First ever time that he threw on the mound in a kid pitch game, and he had a Jordan Lyles-esque line. Okay. And I feel good about it because kid pitch, we focus on the positives. Yeah. He ended up with 3 hits, 3 walks, 2 hit batsmen, 7 runs, 2 strikeouts. And he's pumped about the 2 Ks.
How many innings?
1 inning.
Oh, yeah. Sit him down, kid.
1 inning. 2 Ks in 1 inning.
That's great.
And then he had 2 strikes on the batter that was up, except for it was a wild pitch that bounced off the backstop, and they got the kid trying to run home for the 3rd out.
Wow.
See?
Machine.
It's the best play in baseball.
Would have been 3 strikeouts if it wasn't for that. It just took him a while to get rolling. 3 hits, 3 walks, 2 hit by pitch, 7 runs, 2 strikeouts, though. 2 strikeouts. Take that. Your best from the weekend, Josh.
He threw strikes when it mattered. My best of the weekend is the thing I've been watching that's not a sports adjacent thing, that is very narrow casting, but there's a show called Dimension 20 that is a real play Dungeons and Dragons like series that is a bunch of the, I don't know if you remember, ever watched College Humor videos. I don't know what their span was. I know Dylan was watching College Humor videos back in the day. They have now this whole thing, Dropout TV, that they have all sorts of creative projects out through. But as a mix of incredible improv and incredible storytelling and character building, it's an achievement. It's absolutely fascinating. Fantasy High was the first season they did. We watched that first season of that over the weekend, the last couple of weekdays, and it's tremendous. So if you've ever thought, I would watch some people play improv D&D very well for a period of time, Dimension 20 would be a great place to start. Awesome. That's my best of the weekend.
Awesome. We will take a timeout, come back, wrap up the show next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, about 25 hours away from when the Chiefs have to cut down to the 53-man roster. Certainly there might be some names along the way that could come up and we could be discussing. Who gets the ring, though?
I'm going to go ahead and give it to Amir Smith-Marset. He breaks 100 yards receiving in the final preseason game. He's who gets the ring, brought to you by Ruback Fine Jewelry. Schedule your appointment for their Everything Must Go sale before it's too late. Amazing deals and sale dates. It started on August 21st. It runs through September 16th. Call 913-649-8811 or visit their website at ruback.co. That's ruback.co. ISM, the three letters to know, as Amir Smith-Marset's going to end up hitting waivers. I think he's going to end up being on a new team this year, but a great performance and hopefully got himself a job somewhere else in the NFL this weekend.
You're giving him the ring.
I am.
And he is praying tomorrow his phone does not ring.
That's exactly right.
So if he heard this segment, he may not be a fan of, hold on, no, I don't want my phone to ring.
You want a Ruback ring,
yeah, there it
not
is.
a cell phone ring.
Okay.
I imagine your significant other might too, just since we're talking about it.
That's right. And if your phone doesn't ring tomorrow, go get that ring from Ruback.
Exactly right.
There you go. Petronet.
Having pain like that and not knowing how you caused it and for how long it's lasting, it's debilitating.
QC Kinetics patient Diane Richardson.